Okay, we are going to reconvene. And hopefully we have where we do. Thank you, sir. David Fleming.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Sorry, I want to make sure I'm able to see. Okay,
Thank
here
you.
we go. My name is David Fleming, and I serve as Director of Policy and Research for Yankee Institute, a nonprofit public policy organization that drives positive legislative results to build a vibrant, hopeful Connecticut. Yankee Institute opposes the three paid sick leave bills, SB 7, HB 5166, and SB 12, all of which represent a classic case of a cure that's worse than the disease. Contrary to what bill supporters claim, the issue has nothing to do with compassion for employees. These bills reflect a troubling mindset, a conviction that government knows best. But most politicians have never met a payroll, run a business, or relied on their business to feed a family. The Labor and Public Employees Committee are using three placeholder bills, which makes it more difficult for Connecticut citizens to follow important legislation. SB 7, which simply reads to support paid sick days. The other two bills offer a little more, including the governor's office request for SB 12 that seeks to implement the governor's budget recommendations. HB 5166 contains a whopping 5 vaguely worded sentences. That said, similar bills from last session tell us what we can expect as this legislation develops. One 2023 bill sought to expand the universe of those for whom employees could take paid time off to include anyone a worker self-identifies as having a close association with the employee. This definition extends beyond even the most generous collective bargaining terms for sick leave used in most, if not all, municipal and state contracts. One 2023 bill imposed additional administrative requirements on employers and even eliminated exceptions for nonprofits and manufacturing. The legislation went as far as dictating benefits for paid time workers, part-time workers who work 30 hours per week, allowing employees to accumulate 1 hour of leave per every 30 hours worked. The potential for abuse is limitless. Lacking from all the bills was any language to address fraud or abuse of leave. These past bills from the governor's office and labor committee were somewhat one-sided, and there's no reason to expect anything different this session. None of the past or present bills account for the financial situations of small and medium-sized business owners. Many owners struggled mightily throughout the pandemic and are resisting passing on the inflationary costs they confront as they attempt to simply keep their doors open. Employers who want to reward their employees with additional time off are already free to do so. What's more, these bills presume an employee prefers one specific type of benefit to any other. We all know some people who prefer better benefits to higher pay, but we also know people who prefer higher pay to better benefits? Shouldn't the state allow a worker to make these decisions themselves? Businesses will always increase pay and benefits to attract and retain talented employees, but these decisions must and should be based on what employees want and what job creators can afford, not on command and control legislative edicts. Otherwise, employees want and what job creators can afford, not on command. Reduced, otherwise, unintended consequences can lead to laid off workers, reduced economic growth, decreased competitiveness, and the erosion of the state's tax base. Many small businesses may not have a formal sick leave policy, but they treat employees like family. For our state to flourish, small and medium-sized businesses must be able to prosper and compete with big businesses that can better absorb such expensive new regulations. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony before this distinguished committee.
Thank you, sir. Any questions or comments? Senator Kushner, followed by Senator.
Just quickly, I believe at the beginning of your testimony, you state that there's no language attached to these bills, SB 7, the governor's bill number 12, and House Bill 5166. Was that your testimony?
Yes, that was.
Okay, I would refer you to LCO number. So for Senate Bill 7, LCO number 1122, that bill was released a week prior to this hearing, and it's a fully drafted bill, as is Governor's Bill 12 and as is House Bill 5166. So I would refer you to those. 5166 is LCO 1125, and the Governor's Bill is LCO number 644. They're fully drafted bills.
Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Sampson. Senator, I think you're muted.
I'm not sure I can hear you. Sorry.
We can't hear you.
Hang on. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
All right. Awesome. Yeah, I just forgot to hit a button. I apologize. I unmuted myself, but I have an extra button for my technology on this end. So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And David, thank you for being here. You must be clairvoyant, since even though you didn't know that the language was filed on these bills, it seemed to me you knew exactly what was in them, which is more or less what we had in previous years. A massive expansion of paid sick days, down to employers with as little as one employee. And I just, I really appreciated your testimony, because you brought up a few things that I think were not brought up most of the day. And it's a shame that there are very few folks looking at this from an objective point of view, rather than simply as employees that may benefit. And I certainly appreciate the folks that come here for that purpose. And we need to have a full spectrum. We need to have employers talking about how it's going to impact them, and we need to have experts like yourself, people that understand economics and how policy is going to drive the future course of our state. So that's why you're a very important person to hear from. You mentioned something about a mandate like this on an employers affecting their ability to offer one benefit versus another. Can you just tell me what you meant by that?
Certainly. Well, I suppose generally speaking, whenever an employee goes before their employer, potentially if they're a new hire, they have the opportunity to offer their services in a free voluntary arrangement, for which the employer can counter with their own offer and arrive at a mutually beneficial arrangement. So that can include compensation in terms of pay, benefits such as paid leave, all sorts of other arrangements that these two parties are free to negotiate with one another.
Right. So basically what you're saying, if I'm understanding it correctly, is that an employer-employee relationship is a voluntary agreement that both parties have the ability to negotiate. And by the legislature passing a law saying that the employer has to provide a certain benefit, that's going to prevent both sides from being able to negotiate certain things.
Yes,
for example,
exactly.
Yeah, if somebody says, well, I really don't care about having paid sick days, I'd rather make an extra 25 cents an hour. The employer can't get rid of the paid sick days for the employee to get what they would have preferred. And I think that's the danger of a lot of these things. Another thing that I thought was ironic today, which I hope you can speak to, is we have so many people that are union officials and advocates for collective bargaining testifying in favor of this legislation, and other bills on our agenda that create mandates on employers. And the irony of that is people that are advocates for collective bargaining should be advocates for collective bargaining, not advocates for the state interjecting themselves and bargaining on behalf of one of the parties. I don't know if that topic interests you, if you want to comment on it.
Well, I'm still fairly new to Connecticut in terms of just taking this job on fairly recently. So I think I'd like to study the issue a little bit more before I take a firm stance on that question. But I think it's certainly something that we should be concerned about if that's accurate. So thank you.
Yeah, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. It's just something I noticed all day listening to the same testimony. I mean, almost all of the testimony is very, very similar. And that's to be understood. I mean, a lot of people share the same reasons for having a position on this. It just strikes me. I'm like, if I'm somebody who is strongly advocating for unions being represented and having their say, and being able to use collective bargaining to their advantage. But here we are, we're not using collective bargaining. We're coming to the state and saying, state, you make a law that is going to tell our side and the other side what the deal is. It just strikes me as so odd. I guess, I mean, the Yankee is known as having a lot of background and understanding how policy will impact the economic viability of the state, for example, moving forward. Do you see what I see as the biggest change in this legislation, which is going from 50 or more employees being mandated down to as little as one? So you're getting away from the Targets and Walmarts, and now you're talking about Joe's vacuum repair, or Susie's Dress Shop, where they might have one employee that they rely on completely. Do you see how that's going to impact our state? I mean, maybe you can give me a little more detail. Maybe you know more about like the percentage of how many small businesses are part of our economy and how many people might be impacted.
Well, I can say that if the fewer employees that you have, the more impact this legislation will have on them, because big businesses can really absorb a lot of these costs, and in some ways they should be advocates for this legislation because it basically makes them more competitive against small and medium-sized businesses. In some ways, it could have put them at a competitive advantage, especially if you're looking at a 1 or 2 person shop. If you're giving yourself or your family member paid time off, that's not really helping anyone. It's basically just moving money around. I mean, it's not really doing anyone any good.
And I mean, I think that there's a mistaken understanding that the state can somehow increase the benefits of employees. And I don't know if you'd agree with me to say that that's not true. I mean, they can shift some things around, but if you tell an employer that they're going to have an additional required regulatory burden that's going to cost a certain amount, they're going to deduct it from somewhere else. And chances are that means that employers are going to give less raises because they've got to pay for the paid sick day program. They're going to maybe hire less employees. It's not for free. And it's not the generosity of the chairs of this committee or the people that are going to vote for this law that's making it happen. This is just an exercise in government force to interfere with the freedom of both parties in the transaction. I'll give you the final word on it.
Well, yes, I would like to say that if we can imagine that there's not just a 5% automatic profit margin for these businesses, oftentimes it's far below that. So anytime you add on a mandate, the profit margin will sink further and further down. And if it gets into negatives, then you could have a situation where the business will close down if the situation does not repair itself in a few years or move to a different state.
Excellent. Thank you so much, David. I appreciate you being here. And hopefully we can get some more folks that share an objective view of this policy to come testify as well. And thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator. Any further questions or comments? Representative Wilson.
Thank you again. So my first question to you, Mr. Chairman, is do you currently, does the Yankee Institute do paid sick or PTO time?
Actually, I was just looking at that today. I could the policy as it stands right now, which I have not had to use, so I honestly I could just quote it from you. Vacation time cannot be carried over from 1 year to the next without permission of the employee's supervisor or the president. The maximum number of days that may be carried over from any 1 year to the next is 2. So that's vacation days. We do have paid sick leave is to be used for employees with temporary short-term illnesses or conditions that prevent them from performing their usual duties and responsibilities or who require medical consultation or treatment. Sick leave may be used with supervisory approval for personal illnesses or emergencies that involve an immediate family member. Employees may use up to 5 sick days per calendar year. So that is our policy.
Excellent. And through you, Mr. Speaker, do you guys have a time frame? So you have that policy, but you've got to go so many days working for them before you can use it?
Yes, I was actually clarifying that today because I had a question about travel this summer, and it is a policy that I believe occurs after 3 months of working for the organization. So I've been at Yankee Institute since April, so now I will be covered going forward.
Okay, and just through you, Mr. Speaker, on average, how many employees does the Yankee Institute have?
There are on our tax form, it's about 15, but I'd say 9 or 10 regular full-time employees.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Representative. Any further questions or comments? Senator Kushner.
I believe you testified toward the end of your testimony that paid sick days would be detrimental to businesses. I wondered if you could cite any research on that or any data that has that is out there that supports that point of view.
Well, I don't have the studies in front of me right away. Actually, my colleague Frank put the testimony part of it together, that part of it together. So I have to get back with you about that.
Thank you. I know that I am aware of data that has been compiled by an organization called the National Partnership for Women and Families. And it was released in 2023 that summarizes studies that have been done across the United States where there are paid sick day laws that would suggest the quite contrary to that position, that it's beneficial to businesses. So you might want to look into that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll look for that. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, Mr. Fleming, thank you for your testimony and time. Have a good evening.
Good evening.
Next up, we have Leila Hernandez. Followed by Misiel Silvas. Misiel Silvas. Next up, we have Rich Hooland. Rich Hooland or Holand. Okay. Followed by Rebecca Corbett.
I'm here.
Hi, Rebecca.
Hi.
You may proceed.
Okay. Good afternoon, Senators Kushner, Representative Sanchez, Senator Sampson, Representative Weir, and the distinguished members of the Labor and Public Employees Committee. My name is Rebecca Corbett. I live in New Haven. I'm a Yale retiree and was a proud member of Unite Here Local 34, one of the Yale unions. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of House Bill 5164. When I went on strike in 2003, I was terrified. I had 3 children at home and was afraid I wasn't going to be able to pay my bills. I was afraid I might lose my job entirely, which would have meant losing the health care that I received from Yale. At the time, I was receiving state benefits despite working at Yale a 40-hour week and sometimes more. I worried about losing my benefits and my housing, which would have left myself and my children without a roof over our heads. I had been homeless before and didn't want to end up back there at that point. I've been working to get off welfare and to create a stable life for my family. But it wasn't just me who was scared. Even my coworkers who had spouses bringing in a second income were worried about the consequences of going on strike. People were afraid of getting behind on their mortgage payments and losing their homes. Just 1 week of lost income could potentially mean disaster for some people. And we were on strike for 3. Having unemployment benefits while on strike would have given my coworkers and I safety net while we fought for a fair contract. However, what we won by going on that strike was life-changing for me and many others. Thanks to the contract we won, a few years later, I was able to buy a house in New Haven that I now live in, lived in for over 10 years. I'm able to help support families of my grown children. And now that I'm retired, I receive a defined benefit pension and allows me to help my children and their families. My daughters are in the 30s and have families of their own, and they're still struggling to find good jobs and wages and benefits. I believe that unemployment benefits for strikers would empower them to fight for better working conditions for themselves if they needed to, or even for an initial union contract. I also believe that unemployment benefits will make companies negotiate differently if they know the striking workers will have support available to them. I know from personal experience that going on strike takes courage, but that by striking, workers can win life-changing victories. These victories are the key to greater prosperity and more rights for workers in the state of Connecticut. I urge the committee to support workers by supporting House Bill 5164. Thanks for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Rebecca. Any questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony and have a good night.
Thank you. You too.
Next up, we have Karen Panetta. Karen Panetta. Next up, we have Rocco Callow. Next up, we have Steve French. Next up, we have Olivia Rinks.
Hello,
Hi, Olivia, you can proceed.
thank you very much. Good evening to the Labor and Public Employee Committee. My name is Olivia Rinkus. I live in the town of North Stonington. I work in Connecticut, and I'm also an undergraduate at the University of Connecticut. I am testifying tonight in strong support of SB 7, an act concerning Connecticut paid sick days, and HB 5164, an act concerning unemployment benefits. 2 years ago, I became sick with the flu and I could not work for almost 4 weeks. My job provided a week of sick pay, but I was still without pay for almost 3 weeks. On top of the stress of the illness, this additional stress made this a difficult time for me. I am very fortunate that this was a temporary illness that resolved with no lasting issues. However, for many people with chronic medical issues or who are caring for family members with a medical issue, this is not the case, and they need to balance these medical needs with the need to be at work to earn a living. Healthcare is not a choice, and working without addressing a medical need can result in seriously exacerbating the issue. Additionally, while I've never participated in a strike as an employee, I recognize that as workers, a strike is a tool that is used only in response to serious unaddressed problems in the workplace. Providing unemployment benefits is one way to support these workers who are seeking to resolve their workplace issue through workplace democracy, and I strongly urge legislators to support Connecticut workers and pass both SB 7 and HB 5164 out of committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Olivia. Any questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Have a good night. Up next, we have Cheryl Bergman.
Hello, I'm here.
Hi, Cheryl. Please proceed.
Hello,
Thank
how
you.
are you today?
Good, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Cheryl Bergman, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak today in support of HB 5164, the ability for striking workers to receive unemployment benefits. I live in New Haven, and I am a member of URA, which is an acronym for the Yale Union's Retiree Association. I retired from Yale in 2018. But in 1982, I was a founding member of Unite HERE Local 34, the Clerical and Technical Workers Union at Yale. In 1984, I was on the Local 34 Executive Board when negotiations for our first contract broke down and our members voted that striking would be necessary to convince Yale to bargain in good faith. That strike lasted for 10 long weeks, from September the 26th until December the 4th. I was 32 years old then, single and self-supporting. I paid my rent, my bills, my car loan, my college loans, and all from my $9,000 a year salary. I was doing okay, certainly okay compared to many of my coworkers who had mortgages to pay and families to support. When it became clear that Yale had no intention of bargaining in good faith, we began the difficult and very scary discussion to consider going on strike. I say scary because when you're talking about going on strike, you're talking about being without a paycheck. And we're talking about your regular day-to-day life being completely upended. And it's not just about you. It's if you support your spouse, your children, your parents, it's about them too. For my personal circumstances, it was just me, but I was the union leader in my department and I was responsible for 30 other people. They were young and older, they were single and couples, some supporting children and others supporting their elderly parents. Our discussions about striking were filled with emotion, fear, excitement, anxiety, but determination. How long would it last? Would it be worth it? Could we win? These questions we did not have answers for in that moment. What if we don't go on strike? That answer we knew. We'll lose this fight for economic fairness and for the dignity and security that good wages and benefits will bring to us and to our community. So we went on strike and we were victorious. Yale's illicit claim that they couldn't afford to pay us a living wage was laid bare. Unfortunately, some of our coworkers did not join in the strike. They were far too frightened to be without a paycheck. No matter what the cost was to their dignity and to their relationships with their fellow union members and coworkers. Those strained relationships and the labels that they wore have remained for more than 40 years. I can only imagine how different things might have been if in 1984 we were able to collect unemployment benefits while striking. Would the strike have even happened? Would more workers have felt able to join the strike, making it shorter and less painful for everyone? Would Yale have been inclined to bargain fairly, since they would be paying in part for the unemployment insurance? In 1935, unemployment benefits were established as a lifeline for ordinary men and women. Those benefits should now be available to striking workers, therefore leveling the playing field for labor to compete with management in disputes, instead of allowing employers to have the ability to starve their workers into submission. I thank you very much for your time and for your consideration of this critically important bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Any questions? Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Cheryl, for your testimony. I just want to say that there's been testimony earlier today regarding the fact that when workers are unionized and they go on strike and secure better benefits or protect benefits they already have, that it does improve the conditions around them for other workers. And I just want to thank you for your strike in 1984. At that time, I was on your picket line. I was representing the workers at Columbia University in similar classifications. And as you probably remember, the following year, we benefited from your activity, from your strength. We had a strike, but it only lasted 4 days. And then we were able to achieve a good contract, much modeled after what you achieved in 1984. So we thank you, and it is good testimony to recall how much a fight like yours can help other workers. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. And it's been an incredible journey these last 40 years, watching what's happened at Yale and having established 34 in 1982, 83, 84, and that first contract in 85. My own daughter is now currently a leader in the union at Yale, and as is my son-in-law. And my husband and I are extremely proud of the work, the sacrifice, the fights we had to manage to deal with. And thankfully, we're supportive of the community, but we were successful. And that has reverberated over all these years. I mean, I've retired from Yale now, but the pension that was put in place back in 1985 allows my husband and I to live very comfortably. And I look at what's happening around the country, and I think about all those folks who have, particularly in this last year, were on strike, and how much easier, though it is never easy, how much easier it would be for them if they had some opportunity to collect unemployment insurance. So thank you very much for even considering this. We all very much appreciate your efforts.
Well, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you, Cheryl, for your testimony. Next up, we have Nelly Jara. Hi, Nelly. You can proceed when you have the opportunity.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Dear members of Labor and Public Employees Committee of the Connecticut General Assembly. My name is Nelly Jara, and I live in Bridgeport, Connecticut. I am the Executive Director of Connecticut Worker Center. I support Senate Bill number 7, an act concerning Connecticut paid sick days. Today, I want to express the urgency for paid sick days to all workers in Connecticut. I represent my community. I am the voice of all those workers who need to be recognized from their employers and have the right for paid sick leave. During the COVID-19 pandemic, our domestic workers, construction workers, people of color who were overrepresented in front jobs were the most affected. They face either severe economic and health consequences and suffer a lot. They continue in the same risk of exposure, and we need to protect them. Inequity in access to paid sick leave only depends of harmers workers are exposed to. When accidents in the workplace happen, they are unaware of their rights. This should be one of their rights. We work for our community and we do our best to support workers and families. We teach them about their basic rights, and when we witness that workers don't have paid sick days, we feel helpless. Many of them need to see a doctor or care for a family member, but they can't. This is unfair, and our legislators should support the expansion in Connecticut for paid sick days. Currently, the law doesn't cover employees of employers with fewer than 50 employees, federal employees, certain employees of manufacturers and nonprofit organizations, and temporary and day laborers. This is unacceptable. Our workers are human beings, and we must include all. Now, we have only 11% of employed workers in Connecticut meet the criteria to be eligible for paid sick days under our current law. And today is our day to advocate and make sure paid sick days must be for all. Our domestic workers must be significantly left out of vital protections and benefits in the workplace and were not included in basic labor protections for 60 years. You have a chance to change this. Expanding basic days will eliminate the employer-side threshold to cover all employers, regardless of where they work. This will ensure domestic workers are included in legislation, so they are not forced to choose between taking care of themselves and providing for their families, especially those who provide home care or elderly care. We consider essential workers, and we continue working through the pandemic at the risk of facing high rates of unemployment. As a leader in my community with moral responsibility, I strongly support the expansion of paid sick days in our state, and I hope the committee at Connecticut lawmakers will vote favorably this year to strengthen Connecticut paid sick leave law. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nelly. Any questions? Representative Hughes.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Nelly, for testifying about the domestic workers that are often left out of this conversation. I know last year when you testified, you talked about retaliation if workers didn't show up for work because they were sick. Can you say something about that, that you've witnessed?
Yeah, basically we are working directly with the workers. People come to our place and they feel safe to share their experience in the workplace. They are being abused, they're being exploited. They are at some point putting their lives, their risk in the workplace, and they have accidents. They can have days by the law that they can see the doctor, or they can have a ultrasound or MRI because accidents happen at the workplace, and the workplace is not providing no paid sick day, because obviously they have to be more than 50 workers to say, oh, I have the right to see or take my day off pay to see a doctor. So our community, especially our immigrant family, is need that. We are every day hearing experience, supporting workers like after an accident, a month after they are having surgery, because we are trying to, making phone calls to the doctor, but they don't have, the employers, they don't recognize for a paid sick day. So I think we all together can work together, and the testimonies and the people who are every day suffering this are human beings. So I think we can, put our energy and all our, dedication to make sure we have a law for everybody, for all the workers in Connecticut.
Yeah, thank you, Nellie, for reminding us of that humanity.
Thank you.
Representative Hughes, Senator Kushner.
Hi, Nellie. It's good to see you tonight. I do want to thank you because several years ago, when we were working on the paid family medical leave program, you were one of the very strong voices in favor of including all workers, including domestic workers. At that time, I was new to the legislature, and I remember being surprised at some information you shared that, in fact, domestic workers already had certain protections. They were just unaware of them, particularly around the requirement that they be paid minimum wage. So I just want to thank you for your advocacy, because you always are able to bring it to our attention how important it is to include all workers, including the domestic workers, on these programs. And, you know, I too believe that I heard some very moving testimony at times from domestic workers who could not take care of their own children when they were sick because they were caring for someone in their home. And you've been very, proactive in a way that has really sharpened our understanding of the role of domestic workers in our society. So thank you for your advocacy.
Thank you. And I'm very grateful to be part of the education program for domestic workers in the state. So they are learning the basic rights. We are encouraging them to have and ask for support, and we stand for our community and we work in the community. And I think we can change this legislation and make sure all the workers are protected. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nellie. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, have a good evening. Our next individual to speak is Tiff Shen.
Good evening, distinguished members of the Labor and Public Employee Committee. My name is Tiff Shen. I live in New Haven. I am a member of Unite Here Local 217, and I work as a researcher for Unite Here. We are the Hospitality Worker Union. In 2018, as part of my work, I was assigned to support a group of workers who went down and struck for months and a half. And I got to witness firsthand the hardship workers face when they're on a long strike. Day after day, we were out in the cold, picketing from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., walking the equivalent of 10 to 50 miles every day. I have to admit that, even for I would say young and relatively healthy guy like myself, after a few weeks, walking that much distance really began to wear on me. But unlike the workers, I didn't have to go home and figure out how to keep feeding my families while the bills started to pile up. And after a few weeks being on strike, the stories of how people are worried about losing their home felt heavier than the boots on my feet. Strikes, of course, are disruptive to employers too, but the stakes are different for them, right? They could try to keep their shop open by making the managers pick up extra hours or bringing workers from outside. They can afford to wait the workers out. And that's why I'm in favor of HB 5164, because it's what workers need to level the playing field, to not have to choose between abject working conditions versus going on strike and not being able to pay for heating bills in a cold winter. This bill will provide striking workers an economic lifeline in that moment of crisis. And it's, as many people have testified, it's the benefit of all working people in Connecticut. We saw that just last year, right, with the strike of the auto workers against GM, Ford, and Stellantis. And after they won significant wage increases, non-union auto workers, automakers were forced to increase their own pay and benefits to compete. Even the playing field for union workers help all workers and strengthen our economy. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Our next person up to speak is Alec Black.
Good afternoon, Senator Kushner, Representative Sanchez, Senator Sampson, Representative Weir, and the distinguished members of the Labor and Public Employees Committee. My name is Alec Black, and I live in New Haven, Connecticut. I worked as a barista at Red and Black Cafe in Middletown, Connecticut. We joined Unite Here Local 217 in August last year, and 217 Local 217 represents hospitality and service workers across Connecticut. I work as a researcher now at Unite Here. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of HB 5164. I started working at Red and Black Cafe because I needed the money to get through college. My experience is pretty common. College is expensive, and I took out a lot of loans to finish my degree. I started organizing the union at my job because I care about my workplace and I care about my coworkers. Also, if I couldn't work during college, my life would have been much harder. I wouldn't have been able to save up for rent, student loan payments, groceries, and other essentials after graduation. This is what I think about when I think about HB 5164. Workers don't make the decision to strike lightly, especially when the deck is stacked in favor of employers. However, the reason so many union jobs across Connecticut serve as a pathway to a stable middle-class life is because people decided to take these risks and strike so employers would remain at the table and negotiate. Absolutely no one should have to worry about how to keep the lights and heat on, pay rent, or put food on the table. Unemployment benefits are a crucial economic lifeline for people who are in difficult economic times, whether if it's because someone lost their job, cannot find work, or on strike for a better workplace. State of Connecticut needs to treat all working people fairly. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Alec. Any questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Have a good night. Up next, we have Salvatore Punzo. Salvatore, the floor is yours.
Good evening, Senator Kushner, Representative Thank you. Good evening, Senator Kushner, Representative Sanchez, Senator Sampson, Representative Weir, and the distinguished members of the Labor and Public Employee Committee. My name is Salvatore Punzo. I live in New Haven. I serve on the Board of Alders, and I am a retired educator. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of HB 5164 as a retired union member and as an elected official. The New Haven Board of Alders is committed to supporting good jobs for New Haven residents, and we know that a good job is a union job. HB 5164 will incentivize employers to settle good contracts without waiting workers out and will improve job protections for union members and all workers. I have experienced this firsthand. I was born and raised on the east side of New Haven, the same ward I represent today. I started teaching in the New Haven public school system in 1969. In 1969. Between teaching and eventually moving into administration, I worked 49 years in the New Haven public schools, with the last 14 years in my neighborhood school, Nathan Hale, upon my retirement in 2018. Early in my teaching career, I was involved in 4 separate strikes. I didn't want to go on strike. My coworkers, most of whom were women, did not want to go on strike, but we made that decision together because we felt we had to. Teaching in the early days meant many people had second or third jobs, like myself, while buying supplies for our students with our own money. There was no limit in class size, no specialty teachers. I taught everything: music, art, and PE. I saw a lot of talented, caring teachers leave the field because they just couldn't make ends meet. The strike helped us turn these jobs into careers: smaller class size, hiring more teachers, prep periods, sick days. I was able to send my 2 sons to college, and I saw my coworkers do the same. These victories led to the continuity of teachers being able to stay, and that benefits the students. I am proud of what we were able to win, the impact we had on the teaching profession, the dedicated professionals that do the work, and the young people that benefited from it. But it shouldn't have had taken 4 strikes to win basic necessities. If there were laws like HB 5164 on the books, employers would be less likely to push workers to the brink. They'd be encouraged to stay at the bargaining table and figure out a deal that benefits everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Salvatore. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Next, we have Jess Corbett.
Could everyone hear me?
We can hear you.
Thank you. Good evening, Senator Kushner, Representative Sanchez, Senator Sampson, Representative Weir, and distinguished members of the Labor and Public Employees Committee. My name is Jess Corbett. I'm a member of Unite Here Local 34. New Haven Rising, and the president of the Western Connecticut Area Labor Federation. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of HB 5164. In my 24 years in the labor movement, I have walked a lot of picket lines and talked to a lot of strikers. One thing I can say for sure is that no one wants to be out there on the streets. Workers have bills, families, responsibilities. The only reason anyone makes that choice is because they feel like they have to. In 2003, I was a relatively new employee at Yale University when, after 2 years of negotiation standstills, the members of Local 34 voted to go out on strike. I was scared. What would happen? How long would we be out of work? Would we win a good contract? I know my coworkers, who were overwhelmingly women, including my mom, who you heard a few testimonies ago, they had the same fears. Mortgages, rents, utilities, car payments, groceries. Large employers like Yale can withstand the ebb and flow of the market a lot easier than a worker can surrender a week of pay. But we were brave. We stayed out for 3 weeks, won great wage increases that allowed members to quit their second or third jobs, spend more time with their families. We doubled the pension so workers could, after decades of service, could retire with dignity. Very basic things that everyone wants. And in the richest state, in the richest nation, everyone should have. In the ensuing years, I've seen other workers be backed into a corner and make the same brave choice. I've seen them win life-changing contracts, buy homes, invest in their neighborhoods. House Bill 5164 is also an investment in Connecticut communities. It helps even the playing field for workers. It will help bring employers to the bargaining table to sell contracts that will change people's lives and stabilize communities. Thank you, and I can answer any questions.
Thank you, Jess. Any questions? Senator Kushner.
I'm just glad you testified about your mother, because I was going to ask you that question if you were related when I noticed the last name was the same. So I'm sure she's proud of you. It sounds like you're proud of her too.
I can't speak for her, but I'm very proud of my mom.
I'm sure she's proud of you. Jess, any further questions for Jess? Jess, thank you, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Sarah Sayano.
Yes, thank you.
Proceed.
Good afternoon, Senator Kushner, Representative Sanchez, Senator Sampson, Representative Weir, and the distinguished members of the Labor and Public Employees Committee. My name is Sarah Sayano. I live in New Haven. I am a Yale retiree and a proud member of Unite Here Local 34, one of the unions at Yale. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of HB 5164. I remember before I ever had a union job, I was newly single parent, trying to make ends meet with a family at home. I worked as a server at a number of restaurants. It wasn't a stable work environment. 2 different restaurants closed on me, one without any notice, and one we actually did know was about to close. But I showed up for my shift for the one that closed unexpectedly, and there they were. The doors were locked and never opened again. But then I got a job at Yale University. I was extremely lucky to have that happen to me. We had good benefits, thanks to the union, and but relatively low pay. But we had a union, and that meant that we had a voice and a seat at the table, which is all important. Over my 27 years at Yale, we made the decision to go on strike 3 times, and I went out those 3 times. It was a tough decision and a scary one, but it was the right one for me to make. Thanks to winning the interim employment pool in one of those in a contract fight, I was able to survive being laid off 6 times. Research assistant positions are vulnerable to lots of things, including the ends of grants and so forth and so on. But because of the interim employment pool, I was able to continue my employment at Yale for 27 years. In 2003, due to a strike, we also doubled our pension and won a wage increase that would eventually allow me to retire in 2019 at the age of 70. And
continue to live in my home, continue my lifestyle as I've known it, which can't be said for a whole lot of people in our country. Going on strike was hard, but I also didn't want to leave my job. Most of my time at Yale, I worked in clinical research studies and I liked my bosses. I didn't want to let them down. I didn't want to let the patients down. And many of those patients were people that didn't have health insurance that covered mental health at that time. We're talking a couple of decades ago in some of these cases. And mental health care wasn't easy to get. They were participating in the studies so that they could also get the free mental health care that was attached to it. They desperately needed it. So telling my boss that negotiations with the university management were going so badly and that I was going to have to walk out and I didn't know when or if I'd be back wasn't a good feeling at all to have, believe me. Telling my patients the same thing and knowing that someone else would have to take up administering the things that I did with them felt even worse. If there was a law like this in place, maybe negotiations wouldn't have gotten to that place. You know, they say something on the picket line when you're on strike. It's one more day. You have to last one more day to win what you're asking for. A multi-billion-dollar entity like Yale wouldn't think it could starve us out if a bill like this was in place. Thank you very much. If I'm out of time. Am I out of time? I just want to say thank you for listening to me, and if there's any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none, thank you again, Sarah, and have a good night.
Thank you, you as well.
So I'm just going to go back to our previous speakers who may be in the room with us or virtual. So I will start with Diana St. Mark. Dan McKinley. Dan McKinnery. All right, we'll circle back to him while you look. Nicholas Pearson. Clyde Ibarra. James Alexander. Karen Giddy. Teresa Butchta. Suriana Uprich. Nicole Bongiovanni. Laura Nasser. Demetrius Terrell. Jackie English. Margaret Walker. Somebody online. Okay. Judith Paz. Jaleesa Lopez. Genesis Guerrero. Zania Castillo. Leslie Blateau. Layla Hernandez. Michelle Silvas. Rich Holland. Karen Panetta. Rocco Callow. Steve French. Okay, we'll move on to speaker 141, Johanna Schubert.
Good evening. Good evening, members of the committee. Thank you so much for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Johanna Schubert, and I'm the director of the statewide Hospital Violence Intervention Program Collaborative, or CTHVIP, at Hartford Communities That Care. I'm here today in support of SB 7, an act concerning Connecticut paid sick days. Hartford Communities That Care, or HCTC, is a 25-year-old violence prevention nonprofit located in the North End of Hartford. Our mission is to promote a drug-free and violence-free environment. We do this in several ways, but the program I want to highlight today is our Hartford Care Response Team. This is a team of trained and dedicated intervention specialists and case managers who respond directly to victims of community violence at the hospital. They build relationships and offer holistic wraparound services, everything from culturally aware mental health services to in-home wound care, to filling out forms to receive Victims of Crime Act funding, and in worst-case scenarios, walking with a family through burying their loved one. This violence prevention methodology is nationally recognized for improving community outcomes and is evidence-based and community-centered. Often our clients work for smaller employers and are not entitled to paid sick days. This means that they must choose to forego follow-up appointments, physical therapy, or mental health care because they can't afford to take time off work to take these steps in their healing. These delays in accessing care can have long-term negative effects on a victim, their family, and by extension, their community. Many of our victims live on the knife's edge of food insecurity, and forcing a choice between healthcare and work is a true quality of life dilemma. In speaking with one of our intervention specialists, he shared the following anecdote with me. I've had 2 success stories recently with clients who were able to stay employed through their traumatic injury. The key to keeping them employed was the fact that they had paid time off that they could use during their recovery. Many clients I've worked with have lost their homes and fallen deeper into poverty because they lost their jobs for having to take too much unpaid time off. This bill would be a game changer for so many victims. The clients we work with include those directly impacted by violence and their families, who many times serve as caregivers. The provision in this bill that expands the definition of family would allow loved ones to make sure their family member is attended to in the way the nature of their injury calls for. They can be there for loved ones in the hours or days after a violent injury to help ease the transition into the new normal that often accompanies a catastrophic gunshot or penetrating injury. Victims of community violence, such as shootings, stabbings, and assaults, are disproportionately people of color. This aligns with the statistics that show workers of color are overrepresented in industries that do not provide paid sick days. In expanding paid sick leave to include more service occupations, it will mean better outcomes for the victims of community violence that we serve. As director of the CT-HVIP statewide collaborative, I have the privilege of leading a group of community-based organizations, hospitals, and other stakeholders to set goals and expand best practices around HVIP here in Connecticut. I always say that it's our mandate to change the systems within which our communities are being violently injured. SB 7 is a clear imperative piece of legislation that will have immediate and profound impact. Thank you for your time this evening, and if I or our agency can be of help or a resource to you in any way, please let us know.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Senator Kushner?
Thank you for your testimony. And I really appreciate the work that you're doing in the community. It has a major impact, and I know that it's something that we appreciate in the legislature and have tried to recognize in past budget legislation to help provide funding to grassroots on-the-ground organizations like yours. I do want to ask you, I imagine it's a small agency. How many people work for the agency?
There's about 18 to 20 of us, but our crisis response team, our Hartford Care Response Team that responds directly to victims, there's only about 8 of them altogether.
And I'm just curious if you have paid sick time yourselves.
We are fortunate enough, yes, that we do have paid sick time off. It makes a big difference in an industry like ours because of the secondary trauma that our interventionists experience when they're showing up bedside at traumatic injuries day after day.
I have been asking this question. I didn't single you out at all. I've been asking this question of a number of the nonprofits that have testified today, because I do think it's what I appreciate is that putting value on the people that work for these nonprofits is something that I appreciate. And I think that you all struggle, I'm sure, to find funding to do the good work that you're doing in the community, yet you put an importance on providing paid time off. So I appreciate that. And thank you for your testimony.
Thank you. And I've been listening for several hours. I want to thank you for the thoughtful way you've received testimony all evening. I really do appreciate it.
He is great. Thank you for your testimony. All
a
of
good
you,
night.
all of you, every single one of you here, every collective, it's a collective greatness. Thank you for your testimony. Have a good night.
Thank you. You too.
Up next, we have Corey Geisman. Corey's
I'm on Zoom. I'm not sure if you guys can hear me.
can see you and hear you, Corey.
Oh, terrific. Sorry about that. Good evening, and thank you all for your endurance in sticking through this hearing. I second what the former testifier said about the way you guys have handled this. So thank you. Good evening, Senator Kushner, Representative Sanchez, and distinguished members of the Labor and Public Employees Committee. My name is Corey Geisman, and I am the Executive Director of the SEIU State Council. Our council consists of 5 locals, 1199, 32 BJ, CSEA, CEUI, and the 4 Cs. And we represent over 70,000 workers across the state of Connecticut in both the public and private sector. We are healthcare providers, we are educators, we are janitors, we are state employees, and much more. I come before you tonight to testify in support of House Bill 5165, as well as Senate Bill 7, and House Bill 5164. I've submitted my written testimony in its entirety, so I will try to keep this short for you all. The 3 bills I'm testifying on really boil down to creating an environment in Connecticut that allows white, black, and brown working class people to make it here, which is our new state model, of course. In 2021, Connecticut was tied with Wyoming as the 2 states in the country with the highest levels of income inequality. We should be ashamed of this, and we should be seeking to correct this disturbing statistic. Extending unemployment benefits to striking workers is a matter of balancing a horribly unequal dynamic that exists between employers and their employees. No workers want to go on strike. They do so because they have to. The current dynamic overwhelmingly favors bosses and forces workers to contemplate financial ruin when considering going on strike. By extending these benefits to striking workers, we are making a proclamation as a state that we stand with workers and their families. Furthermore, expanding paid sick days is an issue of equity. The current paid sick days law in Connecticut excludes 1.6 million workers. In a state with only 3.6 million residents, that should shock you. This program desperately needs expansion, and by doing so, we can not only promote greater health amongst our workforce, but we can promote greater public health amongst our communities. I'd now like to draw your attention to House Bill 5165, which would extend FMLA benefits to non-certified BOE employees, such as janitors and cafeteria workers, both of which are represented by SEIU here in Connecticut. These are the folks that keep our schools clean and ensure that our children have nutritious meals when they are at school. In 2012, we were wise enough to expand this to paraeducators, and it is about time that we expand this to the remainder of the non-certified Board of Education employees. Furthermore, this extension would be budget neutral because these are unpaid benefits that we're talking about here. As the members of this committee grapple with these issues, I urge you to think about our standing across the nation as one of the most unequal states in the union. And I plead with you to use your power to pass these bills and to stand with working people and their families. Thank you for your time.
Corey, thank you for your testimony. Any questions or comments from the committee? Representative Hughes.
Thank you so much, Corey, for getting folks to give us their lived experience today too. I am curious though about your coalition stance on not extending paid sick days to those non-certified school employees.
My understanding of our stance on extending paid sick days is really to try to focus on the elements in the current law that are preventing about 3/4 of our workforce from accessing these benefits, which is the number of employees that is if you need to have 50 or more employees under the current law. And our stance when it comes to expanding paid sick days is really about trying to focus on expanding these benefits to part-time workers and folks that are working in workshops or in at companies with fewer than 50 employees. I think that there's certainly a discussion to be had about expanding paid sick days to the non-certified Board of Education employees. These are folks that are the backbone of our school systems, paraeducators, janitors, cafeteria workers, and without them, our schools would simply not function. And so I think as a coalition, we would certainly be willing to explore that issue further. But at the moment, I can't comment further on our stance, unfortunately.
No, that's fine. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to clarify that because they're under a different classification because of collective bargaining and so forth, that's why we're not addressing that in this one bill, right? I mean, I'm just trying to clarify that, right?
Was that a
Through you.
question?
Yeah. You
Senator
can,
Kushner?
yeah, you can.
Okay,
ask.
thank you. I
If
just wanted to make
she knows how we're,
I just want to clarify,
Tackling-
there are, there are two separate bills here.
Right.
The one on paid sick days, there's no carve out of employees. Paid family medical leave is the state program that does not include any public sector workers
right.
that are under collective bargaining or otherwise, with the exception of state employees who are not on collective bargaining, but municipal employees and school board employees who are not covered by collective bargaining are also not in the paid family medical leave program.
Right, which is why this bill addresses
This
that, right?
bill does not address the paid leave at all, but it does guarantee that they would not be fired
Right.
should they need to take time off from work. A benefit that most public school workers have today, including paraeducators. But unfortunately, for some reason, that carve out for custodial workers or cafeteria workers who only work the 10 months did not get addressed when we addressed the paraeducators. So I think we're trying to fix that here so that at least people would have job protection.
Great, thanks for the clarification. Thank you, Corey.
Thank you, Representative.
Any further questions or comments? Seeing none. Corey, thank you again for your testimony.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Up next, we have Joseph Durrett.
Good evening, Senator Kushner, Representative Sanchez, and distinguished members of the Labor and Public Employees Committee. My name is Joe Durrett. I am a safety representative and legislative chair for the Machinists Local 1746 in East Hartford, Connecticut. I'm here to speak in favor of HB 5164. Last year, I gave a testimonial to this committee about unemployment benefits for striking workers. I spoke of my father's employment at Pratt & Whitney and how every 3 years when a machinist union contract was being negotiated with the company, the possibility of a strike loomed over our family of 7 for the holiday season and the winter months. Fortunately, my dad never had to walk the picket line in his 30 years with the company, but I did in December 2001 when the machinist struck against Pratt for 2 weeks. I'd like to share with you an anecdote from that time that has stayed with me over the years. I currently serve as the editor of the IAM Local 1746's newsletter, Insight, but back in 2001, my role is much simpler. I was a contributing writer to the newsletter, and I would seek out topics of interest to write about our membership. In the summer of that year, I got a tip about a fellow member I'll call Pete, who had been identified as a match for a kidney donation to another member who I'll call Maria. Pete ended up donating his kidney to Maria over the summer, and his generosity surely saved her life. When they returned to work in the fall, I interviewed them both for a feature article to run in our December issue of Insight. I mean, what a feel-good article, right? One union member saving the life of another union member through a completely selfless act, and just in time for the Christmas break. God bless us all, everyone. About a week before the article could be published, however, our membership voted to reject the company's last best final offer, and we were on strike. By then, Pete, the donor, had fully recovered from the operation, and he was able to walk the picket line with us. As the recipient of Pete's kidney, Maria's situation was far more complicated. She was still on a regimen of expensive anti-rejection drugs, and she was worried that an extended loss of medical benefits resulting from the strike could become a major financial setback for her. I didn't have a chance to speak with her beforehand, but some of our union officials did, and they tried to assure her that things would be all right, that the union would help her in whatever way they could. In the end, however, the notion of losing medical insurance at such a pivotal period in her recovery was just too much for her to bear, and she crossed the picket line to return to work. As a strike captain, I remember walking the picket line with Pete and hearing him joke about how his kidney had scabbed while he was out honoring the strike. Of course, my feel-good article became collateral damage in all this, and it was never published. So I'm not here today to suggest that unemployment benefits would have been enough to allay Maria's fears to keep her from crossing the picket line. I'm here to stress the point that union members are real people with real problems like anyone else. Corporate leaders aren't concerned with the plights of people like Maria or any of our union members when negotiations run afoul. In fact, it's precisely those plights that they are counting on as leverage against us. That's what union busting is all about. But I can assure you, no one is voting to strike so that it could have a free vacation. We are hard workers who bond together in solidarity to achieve gains in pay and job security and healthcare and safety and so much more for the good of our families and our communities. Voting for a strike is a serious matter for the membership and not one that is taken lightly. Today, we are calling on our legislators to support HB 5164 as a modest step to help level the inequity between our memberships and the powerful companies that we work for, and to help stabilize the communities in which we live. Thank you for your opportunity to speak on this matter.
Thank you for your testimony. Senator Kushner?
It's an amazing story you just told us, and one well worth the wait, even though I know you've been here most of the day, but I appreciate you staying and how you underscore the humanity of the people that make these very difficult decisions. First, to save someone's life through donating a kidney, but also to then walk the picket line. And I hope they remained close.
Yeah, I'm not sure they did. I know that he just retired last year, and I believe she's still there, but I think it was like what my brother testified earlier this day, when somebody crosses the picket line, it creates a rift that can last a lifetime, and it's unfortunate. But yeah, I have empathy for what she had to go through. You know, it's a tough situation. It was really a tragic situation all around. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Sherry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kushner. Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you, sir, for your testimony. Next up, we have Jessica Lara.
Hello.
Hi, Jessica. The floor is yours.
Thank you to the Labor and Public Employees community for hearing my testimony. My name is Jessica Laura. I am here to support SB 7, a bill that will extend the paid sick days law on more working people in Connecticut. I am a unique situation. I enjoy the benefits of having a guaranteed paid sick days at my union cleaning job at night in the government building in downtown Hartford. But I also know the difficulty of not having them at my part-time job for a small Hartford photo studio, at least not having easy access to them. I have had both jobs for a long time, and they have allowed my partner and me to raise our 3 kids. But the difference between what I have with my Union 32 BJSEIU and what I don't have at the non-union job is big. 2 years ago, for example, I had COVID and was out for about 5 days, but I didn't get any compensation from the photo studio. We have to fill out a lot of paperwork to get sick time, including having a doctor's note. So it can be a big hassle, especially when I have to stay home to care for one of my 3 kids. The youngest is 5, and it can be tough to take care of her. To the doctors or every call that keeps her home. My union, of course, negotiates sick time in our contract, but my situation shows how crazy the current system is. So many employers can make their own rules or offer nothing at all. It makes it hard to get ahead or of our bills if we have to miss a day pay. And I think by passing this law, you will make life better for me, for my family, and for working people all across Connecticut. Thank you for listening to my testimony, and thank you for supporting SB 7, improving state sick time law.
Thank you, Jessica. Any questions or comments from the committee? Senator Kushner.
So I think you raised something that we have not heard today. A lot of the testimony, while it's important to hear from everyone, very similar stories, but we hadn't really considered where someone works in two different jobs. And in one place, you might have healthcare, you might have sick days, and in the other, you might not. That does present something more for us to think about. So thank you for testifying.
Thank you, Senator Kushner. Any further comments? Nope. Thank you. Have a good night. Next up, we have John Lugo. Next up, we have Luigi Ligori. Followed by Carrie Honey.
Good evening. Thank you guys so much for being so attentive to everyone all day. I forgot how fun these are. My name is Carrie Hona. I am Executive Vice President of the United Food and Commercial Workers Union Local 371, and also First Vice President of the Connecticut AFL-CIO. At the UFCW, we represent workers at nearly 40 companies throughout Connecticut, Western Massachusetts, and Vermont, one of which is Stop and Shop. And in 2019, I was one of the bargainers working to get an agreement for 31,000 Stop and Shop employees. I'll never forget those weeks leading up to our decision to strike in April. I had bargained many contracts before, including several difficult ones over the years with Stop and Shop. In the winter of 2019, though, the tone was different. The employer arrived to our negotiations with the intent to fundamentally change what it meant to be a unionized employee at their stores. In the 60 sessions, which I know how many they are because I had a lot of little kids at home, preceding the strike, they proposed reducing pension benefits by 2/3, doubling the insurance premium, and making it very difficult to include your spouse on our insurance plan, all while offering bonuses in lieu of wage increases. And there was also a proposed reduction in holidays, vacation, sick time, and Sunday overtime to all new hires in a very specific effort to get us to sell out all of the employees who hadn't shown up yet. This happened in a year when our pension and our health funds were very well funded, and Stop and Shop's parent company made a record $16 billion in US sales. We hadn't had a strike since 1988, but 2019 was different, and the anticipation was palpable. Our strike votes were unanimous, and yet we still went back to the table in hopes of reaching an agreement. When we ultimately made the call to walk out, our members emptied nearly 250 stores in 15 minutes. Our members and our communities were rock solid over those 11 days. However, back at the table, all I kept thinking was, we have to get them back to work before they can't financially recover from this. I knew what it cost to keep my own family of 5 running, and I couldn't sleep thinking about the panic each one of them was feeling. We ended up protecting our pension and our health care and securing meaningful wage increases with the strike lasting 11 days. This bill wouldn't have helped our members because we settled it in less than 2 weeks. However, more than likely, it would have meant that Stop and Shop would have taken us seriously and would have bargained in good faith and settled an agreement without ever forcing the strike in the first place. Thank you, and I'm open to any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions or comments? Representative Wilson.
Thank you for testifying. From the 2019 strike, what's one of the big things, I guess, that you learned from that strike that really resonates with this bill this time around?
So, you know, this is real, and it's really a hard one for me as a bargainer because I sat there and, you know, I've been working with a local for 20 years. I have some experience, but I wanted to stay out longer. I mean, we wanted to. We really wanted to push, and we thought we could have pushed to even protect more than we did, because in the end, we compromised. But we really had to take into account what our members were feeling back on the lines. And you heard from them earlier this morning. They will tell you, the ones that were in charge of those picket lines said, we made the right call. People were getting nervous. People were getting worried. It was getting late. They weren't sure. They were getting more and more unsure of how long they could hold out because we are the working class. I mean, our members, many of them, they work this job. A lot of times they have to work a second job. They couldn't afford childcare. They weren't sure how long they could hold out. And so we had to make that responsible decision as their representatives that they had elected to represent them there. But on the other hand, like, we were killing it on the picket lines. Our communities were awesome. They were strong. Our workers wanted to stick it out. And so, you know, if we did have a little bit longer, maybe we could have been able to settle an even stronger contract. But you have to balance all of those things, those out. And this would not solve all of those problems for them, but it would at least give them a way to take a deep breath, to at least buy groceries, maybe pay a daycare bill for a week so that they could stay out a little bit longer. Yeah, I mean, I think that's, but I will say that that strike made it so that our next contract was that much stronger. You know, it was settled that much more quickly. We'll see. We've got 2 years on it, but you know, to be determined in 2026.
Thank you, Representative. Senator Kushner.
I really appreciate those last comments because I don't think, I think earlier today, we heard from, I think it was Lucille, whose husband also works at Stop and Shop. And she pointed out how scary that was because both of the people providing income to the family were going to be on strike. I remember on the picket line, a number of instances where there were either couples or a mother and a son, particularly one kid who I gotten to know well over the years and found out I met his mother on the picket line. She worked there as well. So that's what's really scary for these families. I think what you just said though about, and I think Representative Wilson for asking that question about what you realized, you know, we see that strike as such a tremendous victory because workers retained affordable health care and their pensions, but we don't often think about the compromise that was made. And as you point out, the picket line was very strong and the community support was incredible. And instead of making advances that you might have made, we don't think about that because people were feeling nervous about going back to work and the hardship and the inability to put food on the table. So I think that's a really important point that you made, that perhaps they could have actually made some gains that they had to wait for.
And they do set the standard. You know, I don't want to beat up too much on Stop and Shop because they have a defined benefit pension for every single worker in that store. They have very good health insurance for their employees, and those workers have the right to bargain. There are many, many non-union operators in this state. So Stop and Shop, you know, has typically set the standard. And so, yes, when we hold out and we are able to get that much stronger of a contract, that changes the environment and the wages for everybody around those stores and the other supermarkets. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for your work too.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Thank you for your testimony. Have a good night. I see we have our next speaker here, Ellen Kupa.
Good evening, Senator Kushner, Representative Sanchez, Senator Sampson, Representative Weir, and the distinguished members of the Labor and Public Employees Committee. My name is Ellen Kupa. I live in New Haven, where I serve on the Board of Alders, representing Ward 8, and I am a very proud member of Unite Here Local 34. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of HB 5164. Within the last hour, you heard from my mom, Cheryl Bergman, who went out on strike for 10 weeks in 1984 to win her union. Some of my earliest memories are about the picket line. In 1996, when I was 8 years old, I found a $10 bill on the playground of my elementary school, and I donated it to the Local 34 Strike Fund. Today, I am a member of Local 34. I'm also a union steward, and I sit on the executive board. And I know that the brave workers throughout Local 34's history, like my mom and my dad, made my life today possible. For the last 20 years, we have not had a strike at Yale because our employer negotiated in good faith and stayed at the bargaining table. I support HB 5164 because it will incentivize other employers to do the same. If our union ever makes the hard decision to go on strike again, I will be out on the line for as long as it takes to win. But I know that that won't be easy. My husband and I are both union workers, and I don't know how we would pay our rent, buy groceries, let alone pay for daycare with no income. Unemployment insurance would help me provide for my 2 children. As a member of the Board of Alders in New Haven, I've worked with local and state leaders to call attention to the jobs crisis in New Haven's Black and Brown neighborhoods. We work with unions and New Haven Rising to push Yale University to hire more residents from low-income neighborhoods. Unionized workers make on average 10% higher wages than non-unionized workers, and this difference grows to 13% and 18% for Black and Latinx workers, respectively. Here in New Haven, workers at Yale have the best wages and benefits for university workers in the country, and unionized hotel workers in New Haven have won pensions, affordable health care, a living wage, job security provisions, and a grievance procedure through their union contracts. Their union standard benefits them and their families and our entire community. Unions are a key to solving the inequality in our state, and HB 5164 is one of the most effective ways unions can have this transformative power. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I am happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony and have a good night. Next up, we have Bella Vasquez. Followed by, all right.
Ms. Vasquez, if you could unmute yourself, please. Ms. Vasquez?
Señora Vázquez, ¿me escucha? ¿Sí puede quitar el botón de silencio, por favor?
She's unmuted.
Ok, señora Vázquez, pues puede comenzar. Oh, that's someone else. Oh.
Sí, muy buenas.
Ok, ya se ve.
Hola.
Hi, everyone. Continúe. Continúe.
Aló.
Sí, continúe, la escuchamos. Va a ser su intérprete.
Espero que me escuchen. Estimados miembros del Comité Laboral y de Empleados Públicos de la Asamblea General de Conérico, mi nombre es Bella Vázquez, soy madre de 2 hijos y tengo mi madre a cargo también. Vivo en New Haven, Conérico. Soy miembro de Unidad Latina en Acción. Trabajo en la construcción y apoyo al proyecto de ley senatorial 1178, una ley que amplía los días de enfermedad remunerados en Conérico. Durante la pandemia, todos enfermamos de COVID y a nadie le importaba nuestra salud. Lo más triste es que mi madre y mis hijos, que no viven en este país, no pudieron recibir sus remesas. ¿Aló?
Sí.
No escucho.
I don't hear well.
Perdón.
Continúa.
Hola.
Sí la escuchamos.
Bueno, no sé si me escucha.
Escuchamos
No
todo.
pudieron recibir sus remesas para cuidarse y salvaguardar su vida, que es lo más valioso que hemos tenido. ¿Me escuchan?
Sí, sí la escuchamos, siga.
Hola.
Sí la escuchamos, usted me escucha.
Cuando tuve un accidente de trabajo, solo me dieron lo suficiente para medicamentos y mis días de enfermedad. No estaban cubiertos porque, porque no pudiera funcionar efectivamente. Apoyo firmemente a la expansión de los días de enfermedad remunerados en nuestro estado. Espero que el comité y los legisladores de Connecticut voten en este año para favor de la ley y la licencia por enfermedad remunerada de Connecticut. Gracias por su tiempo. La verdad, mil disculpas, no sé si se me escucha bien o no.
Todo se escucha bien y voy a continuar a decir lo que usted les comunicó. Dear members of the Labor and Public Employees Committee of the Connecticut General Assembly, I am Bella Vasquez. I am a family mother living in New Haven, Connecticut, and I am a member of Unidad Latina en Acción. I work in construction. I support Senate Bill number 1178, an act expanding paid sick days in Connecticut. During the pandemic, we all fell ill with COVID, and no one was concerned about our health. What's sad is that my mother and my children who do not live in this country could not receive their remittances to take care of themselves and safeguard their lives, which is the most valuable thing we humans have. When I had a work-related accident, I was only given enough for the medicine and my sick days were not covered so I could perform efficiently. I strongly support the expansion of paid sick days in our state. I hope the committee and Connecticut legislators vote in favor this year to strengthen Connecticut's paid sick days law. Thank you for your time. Thanks for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Senator Kushner.
I wonder if you can translate for me, but I was listening to your testimony, Bella, and I'm sorry if I missed it, but what kind of work do you do?
Bella, yo estaba escuchando su testimonio y creo que se me pasó a qué es lo que a usted se dedica.
Bueno, yo trabajo en construcción. Cuando toca hacer, pues de todo un poco. Hay veces toca limpieza, demolición y justamente ahí pues pasan accidentes o hay veces por enfermedad y ahí no le cubre a uno nada de los días de enfermedad. Y pues uno al estar aquí por la misma situación, pues uno tiene que aguantar muchas cosas.
Okay. So I do work in construction. So as you know, we work, with demolition. We suffer sometimes with accidents that are not covered. ¿Me puedes repetir qué más habías dicho después de que los accidentes no se cubrían?
No, que luego, o sea, no te cubren los accidentes y uno no puede pues pedir que le reembolsen eso porque si no luego uno le tiene represalias y entonces pues uno como no tiene derechos a pagos de enfermedad ni vacaciones, nada de eso, pues se tiene que quedar callado por la necesidad porque uno tiene responsabilidad de los hijos y a quienes mantiene.
So yeah, pretty much we do not have cover, like when we have an accident, we don't have any benefits. So, and also we do have, we're afraid of retaliation if we are not showing up for work, and we care for our kids.
Thank you. I appreciate that answer. I think that you may be the first person that's testified about retaliation, which I appreciate. It is something we have to take in consideration because having paid sick days will also protect an employee who needs to use a paid sick day, and that's an important piece of the legislation. So thank you for your testimony.
Gracias por decir su testimonio y creo que vamos a tomar más cuentas en cuanto a lo de la represalias cuando ustedes se enferman. So vamos a tener en cuenta eso para la nueva legislación.
Muchas gracias, muy amable y confío en ustedes.
Thank you very much, and I trust in you.
Thank you.
And you.
Yes. Next up, we have Jill Marks. Okay, I'm just gonna do my due diligence here and try to go back to folks that may have been missed one last time this evening. And we will start from the very top of the list. So let's go back to Diana St. Mark. Dan McHenry, we said that he was not here, sorry. Nicholas Pearson, Clyde Ibarra, James Alexander, Karen Giddy, Teresa Butchta, Karen Giddy, Suriana Uprich, Nicole Bongiovanni, Alora Nasser, Demetrius Terrell, Jackie English, Margaret Walker, Judith Paz, okay, Jaleesa Lopez, Genesis Guerrero, Zania Castillo, Leslie Blateau, Layla Hernandez, Missiel Silvas, Rich Holland, Karen Panetta, Rocco Callo, Steve French, John Lugo, Luigi Luguiro. Thank you. And at this time, I will let Senator Kushner take over the rest of the meeting.
Thank you. Next up, we have Carla Escobar. And Carla is on Zoom, number 151. Carla, are you with us? Can you hear us? Can you unmute? Do you need translation?
Yes, hi, good night.
One moment, we'll have some translation for you.
Okay, thank you.
Carla, yo le voy a ayudar a entender, ¿ok? Ya puede hablar.
Ok, gracias. Sí, buenas noches, estimados miembros del Comité de Trabajo y empleados públicos de la Asamblea General de Connecticut. Me llamo Carla Esquivel y vivo en Stamford, Connecticut. Yo apoyo el proyecto de ley del Senado número SB7, una ley que amplía los días de enfermedad pagados en Connecticut. Yo soy líder en la comunidad y trabajadora del hogar. Tengo 25 años viviendo en Estados Unidos y sé lo importante que es si fuéramos incluidos en los días de enfermedad pagados. Los días de enfermedad pagados deberían de ser un derecho. Las trabajadoras domésticas son las niñeras que cuidan a sus hijos, somos las empleadas que limpian, que ponen en orden su hogar y las trabajadoras que cuidan y garantizan que sus hogares funcionen. Como trabajadora he vivido en carne propia los desafíos que me he enfrentado por no tener días de enfermedad pagados. He pasado por situaciones en las que estuve enferma, muy enferma, y no pude darme el privilegio de tener un día para recuperarme. Y aún así, estando enferma, he tenido que ir al trabajo, porque muchas veces nuestros empleadores nos quitan el día del trabajo si cancelamos, y aún nos cancelan nuestro trabajo en la semana completa. Y más aún, se nos cuestiona si nuestras enfermedades son contagiosas para las familias. Al enfermarnos, nos enfrentamos a muchas dificultades, abusos, amenazas, discriminación. Muchas veces cuando nos reportamos enfermas, nos responden, si no puedes trabajar, hay muchas personas que pueden tomar tu lugar. En una ocasión, mi esposo me llevó a mi lugar de trabajo porque estaba embarazada de 7 meses. Y luego regreso a casa, sufrió un accidente consecutivo donde se vieron involucrados 7 automóviles en la Interestatal 95. Recibí a las 9 de la mañana una llamada del hospital de Stamford donde me decían que mi esposo había tenido un accidente. Hablé con mi empleador y me dijo que me llevaría al hospital para ver que todo estuviera bien. Al llegar al hospital, a la sala de emergencia, vieron mi avanzado estado de embarazo y me dijeron que había un hombre fallecido en el accidente y que tenía que esperar unos minutos para corroborar que no fuera mi esposo. Fueron los minutos más largos de mi vida, porque justo podía ver la cabeza del hombre completamente abierta en dos y ver la masa encefálica por fuera y estar con la incertidumbre si era mi esposo. Al final de 2 horas, mi clienta me dijo, Carla, tienes que volver a casa para que termines de limpiar y cuidar los niños. Y por necesidad de ver las condiciones que vivimos y necesitábamos más que nunca de mi trabajo, tuve que volver a terminar mi horario de 7 horas de trabajo. Esto no se lo deseo a nadie, pero como trabajadora encontramos día a día muchos desafíos. Al no tener leyes que nos beneficien en nuestra comunidad y en el estado de Connecticut, ganamos todos porque nadie gana cuando los trabajadores inmigrantes de bajos recursos no tienen días de enfermedad pagados. Recuerden que somos seres humanos y necesitamos el dinero para pagar cosas importantes, como la renta y la comida. Cuando los trabajadores no tienen días de enfermedad, no tenemos ningún remedio. Trabajamos enfermos y nos exponemos a otras enfermedades. O en caso muy triste, enviamos a nuestros hijos enfermos a la escuela. Si dejamos a nuestros hijos en casa, particularmente como está la economía, nos arriesgamos a perder nuestro pago e incluso nuestro trabajo. En Connecticut deben crear políticas fundamentales que nos protejan a todos los trabajadores y nos den nuestro derecho de días pagados para ser usados en enfermedades y no tener que enfrentarnos a decidir entre nuestra salud y supervivencia económica para nuestras familias. Apoyo firmemente la ampliación de los días de enfermedad pagados en nuestro estado. Espero que el comité y los legisladores de Connecticut voten favorablemente este año para reforzar la ley de días de enfermedad pagados. Gracias, Carla Esquivel.
Thank you. Now we'll have the translation. Sure.
Dear members of the Connecticut General Assembly's Work and Public Employees Committee, my name is Carla Esquivel and I live in Stamford, Connecticut. I support Senate Bill number 1178, an act expanding paid sick days in Connecticut. I am a community leader and a domestic worker. I have lived in the United States for 25 years, and I understand how important it is for us to be included in paid sick days. Paid sick days should be a right. Domestic workers are the caregivers who look after your children. We are the cleaning staff who maintain order in your homes, and we are the caregivers who ensure that your households function. As a worker, I have personally experienced the challenges of not having paid sick days. I have been in situations where I was very sick and couldn't afford to take a day off to recover. Even when I was sick, I had to go to work because often our employees penalize us if we cancel, sometimes even firing us for the entire weekend, for the entire week. Furthermore, we are questioned if our illness are not contagious to the family. When we get sick, we face many difficulties, abuse, threats, and discrimination. Many times when we report being sick, we are told, if you can work, there are many people who can take your place. On one occasion, my husband took me to my workplace because I was 7 months pregnant, and on his way back to his workplace, he had a car accident involving 7 cars on Interstate 95. I received a call from Stamford Hospital at 9 in the morning, informing me that my husband had been in an accident. I spoke with my employer, who said they would take me to the hospital to make sure everything was okay. Upon arriving at the emergency room and seeing my advanced state of pregnancy, they told me that a man had died in a car accident and that I had to wait a few minutes to confirm it wasn't my husband. Those were the longest minutes of my life because I could see the man's head split open and his brain mass outside. And I was uncertain if it was my husband. After 2 hours, my client told me, Carla, you have to go home to finish cleaning and take care of the children. Out of necessity to see the conditions we were living in, and because I need my job more than ever, I had to return and finish my 7-hour work schedule. I wouldn't wish this to anyone, but as worker, we face many challenges every day. By having laws that benefit us in our community and in the state of Connecticut, we all win because nobody wins when low-income immigrant workers don't have paid sick days. Remember, we are human beings and we need money to pay for important things like rent and food. When workers don't have sick days, we have no recourse. We work sick and expose others to our illness. Or in sad cases, we send our sick children to school. If we leave our children at home, particularly with this economy, we risk losing our pay and even our jobs. Connecticut must create fundamental policies that protect all workers and give us our rights to paid days to be used in sickness without having to choose between our health and the economic survival of our families. I strongly support the expansion of paid sick days in our state. I hope that the committee and Connecticut lawmakers will vote favorably this year to strengthen Connecticut's paid sick days law. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. And I'm sorry, I don't know your name, the person who's translating.
My name is Soshi McCarthy.
Soshi. So thank you, Soshi, for translating. I would just ask that if you could let Carla know in Spanish that the bill that she referred to, Senate Bill 1178, was the number for last year's bill, but it is the bill that we're discussing this year that is Senate Bill 7. I just didn't want.
Can you repeat the number for me?
Senate Bill 7, SB 7. And that way she won't be
SB7.
confused going forward.
Carla, solo te queremos informar que el bill que estabas mencionando es el del año pasado y que el nuevo bill se llama SB7.
Lo siento, estaba nerviosa, gracias.
I am so sorry, I was very nervous, but thank you.
Oh, no, I wasn't saying it to correct her more, that she would not be confused going forward. But
Okay.
each year we renumber the bills.
Okay, so vamos a renombrar los números, okay?
And I just do want to say that, Carla, I feel so horrible for the situation you described with your husband, and clearly understand that it's really important that domestic workers receive these benefits because far too often you're at risk of losing your job, and you shouldn't have been put in that position where you had to fear for your job when your husband could have been so severely hurt in the accident.
Ok, Carla, y siento mucho escuchar lo que nos comentaste acerca de lo que te pasó con tu esposo. Siento mucho que hayas pasado por eso y no me gustaría que los trabajadores del hogar perdieran su trabajo por situaciones como estas.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions
Gracias
or
por su
comments?
testimonio.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Next, we have Auri Garcia. And we should just ask Auri, do you need translation?
No, I don't. Good evening. My name is Ori Garcia Esquivel. I'm a student at West Hill High School in Stamford, Connecticut. I am a daughter of a domestic worker in Stamford, and I'm here today in favor of expanding Connecticut paid sick days. Although I am a 15-year-old girl who does not currently have a job and where I would need a paid sick day, I have seen my own parents deeply struggle with not having paid sick days. My parents are the hardest working people I know and love, and to see them go to work even when they do not feel well breaks my heart. It breaks my heart because I hate seeing them wake up in the morning, getting ready for work when they clearly do not feel well. It is already hard enough seeing my parents get up every single day, getting ready for work even when they aren't sick, dreading to go to work because it's the same thing over and over, and it's just tiring. So believe me when I say that seeing them Getting ready for work is already sad knowing that they are tired. It's even more heartbreaking knowing they choose to go to work sick because they can't afford missing a day. I can't imagine how every other person feels knowing they need to go to work even if they are sick because they have needs and bills and a life they need to take care of. Providing sick days would help secure the future of those who wouldn't need to worry about not going to work because they are sick. It would be the beginning of something practical and peaceful. As a high school student, I strongly believe that sick days should be paid. This is not only a matter of fairness, but also one of public health and well-being. We deserve to have the peace of mind that we can take care of our health without worrying about losing income or our job. Paid sick days are essential for maintaining a health workforce. When people are forced to choose between going to work sick or staying home without pay, we are more likely to come to work ill, spreading germs to coworkers and customers. This not only prolongs our own recovery, but also puts others at risk. Puts others at risk. Paid sick days would allow us to stay home when we are sick, reducing the spread of illness in the workplace and in the community. Paid sick days are important for our well being. When you can take time off to rest and recover from illness, you are more likely to get better quickly and avoid complications. This can lead to lower healthcare costs for individuals and the health and sorry, this can lead to lower healthcare costs for individuals and the healthcare system as a whole. Additionally, paid sick days can reduce stress and improve mental health by providing us with the time we need to focus on our recovery without worrying about our finances. Furthermore, paid sick days can help to reduce inequality. Many low-wage workers who are already more likely to have poor access to healthcare are also less likely to have access to paid sick days. This means that we are forced to choose between our health and our income, putting us at a greater risk of illness and financial hardship. Providing paid sick days for all would help to level the playing field and ensure that everyone has equal access to the time off we need to take care of our health. By providing sick pay days, we can help to create a healthier, more productive workforce and reduce inequality in our society. It is time for us all to recognize the importance of paid sick days and ensure that all have access to this basic benefit. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ari. I noticed when you introduced yourself, you had your full last name. Am I correct that you used a longer last name than what we see here? Garcia Escobar? I just wonder if you're related to the previous speaker.
I am. She's my mom.
I thought that might be the case. It must have been very difficult for you when your father had that accident to know what your mother went through. So I really appreciate you being here and testifying tonight. It is really important when young people can become accustomed with how we make laws and participate in that process. You did an excellent job. I know I look to the side because I'm looking at my computer so I can see you when you're not on the screen. But I do want you to know, last year when we were discussing this bill, we were working with a young woman. Her name is Nicole San Clemente, and we worked with her for months. And then at some point during our conversations, learned that her parents were domestic workers and that she was fighting for this right for all workers because of her own experience growing up in a household with domestic workers. So her experience, I'm sure, was similar to yours. And it's wonderful that you could testify today because we need to hear the young voices that are impacted by these bills and by this legislation. So thank you so much for testifying. I'm sure your mother is extremely proud of you tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other comments or? Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Next up, we have Diana Kajalima. Kajalima? Is Diana here? Diana, yes. If you want to.
Buenas noches.
Do you need, necesita traducir?
Sí, por favor.
Un momentito, momentito.
Okay.
Buenas, Diana. Yo le voy a ayudar a interpretar, ¿ok? Continúe.
Okay. Muy buenas noches. Mi nombre es Diana Cajilema. Soy residente de Stanford y soy una trabajadora del hogar de Nosotras Conérico. Quisiera contar mi historia. Nadie gana cuando los trabajadores inmigrantes de bajos recursos no tienen días de pago. Los políticos que proponen proyectos de ley que están en contra de los intereses de los trabajadores porque no cuidan y aprueban las leyes que nos protegen. Mi historia es que aunque llevo 2 años aquí en el país, he podido vivir lo que no es tener días de enfermedad. Llegué a Stanford, soy de Ecuador, con el sueño de reunirme con mi padre, quien me dejó cuando tenía tan solo 2 años de edad, para un futuro mejor y para mí y para mis hermanos. Así que viviendo la situación que en estos momentos desde Ecuador tomamos la decisión de llegar acá con mis 2 hijas, mi esposo. Al llegar, eh, pude reunirme con mi papá. Nuevamente fue el sueño más hermoso y realizado que tuve al ver a mi papá. Al poco tiempo a mi papá le diagnosticaron con cáncer en etapa terminal y fue tan difícil elegir para mí entre trabajar o cuidar lo más sagrado que uno tiene, que son los hijos o un padre. Mi papá falleció, pero me sentí impotente de no tener la oportunidad de contar con días de enfermedad para cuidar a mi papá. Estimados miembros del Comité del Trabajo y Empleados Públicos de la Asamblea de Connecticut, yo apoyo al proyecto de ley 1178, una ley ampliando los días de enfermedad pagados en Connecticut. Muchas gracias.
Good afternoon. My name is Diana Cajilema. I am a resident of Stanford, and I am a domestic worker and a member of Nosotras Connecticut. Buenas tardes. I want to tell a story. Nobody wins when low-income immigrants workers don't get paid sick days. Politicians propose bills that are against the interests of working people because they don't care to pass laws that protect us. And I want to tell my story. Although I have been in the country for 2 years, I have been able to experience what it is not to have sick days. I came to Stanford from Ecuador with a dream of reuniting with my father, who left me when I was 2 years old for a better future for my brother and me. Because of the living situation in Ecuador, we made the decision to come here with my 2 daughters. When I arrived, I was able to reunite with my father again. It was the most beautiful and fulfilling dream I had, because my father was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and it was so hard to choose between working or taking care of the most sacred thing that one has, which is children or a father. My father passed away, but I felt helpless that I did not have the opportunity to have sick days to care for my father. Dear Connecticut Assembly Labor and Public Employees Committee members, I support Senate Bill 7. A bill extending paid sick days in Connecticut. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deanna. And I'm so sorry for the loss of your father and how hard that must have been for you. And I know that one of the things that we worked so hard for in 2019 was to ensure that domestic workers have access to the paid family medical leave program, which at this time you could use for the serious illness of a parent like your father. So hopefully that's a benefit you have access to, but clearly we suffer for your loss. So thank you for testifying tonight.
Muchas gracias, Diana. Lo siento mucho lo que pasó con tu papá. En el 2019 teníamos el bill de las familias para cuidar a sus familias. Espero que te hayas beneficiado. Pero ya, una vez más, siento mucho lo que pasó con tu papá.
Muchas gracias.
Next, we will have Floricienta Montenegro.
Hi. Good evening, dear members of Labor and Public Employees Committee of the Connecticut General Assembly. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to testify. My name is Floricienta Montenegro, and I live in Bridgeport, Connecticut. I support Senate Bill number 7, an act concerning Connecticut paid sick days. I am a member leader of Connecticut Worker Center, and I am a domestic worker. I work as a nanny, and I do other work possible. I am a hard worker, and on several occasions, I have had to be absent from work due to illness. I remember that the family I work with, taking care of 2 beautiful little children, returned from vacation sick with a bad flu, later turning out to be COVID and infecting me. I had to stay home recovering without pay for more than 5 days. And this family did not recognize me any dollar, even though they knew I got infected for them. This greatly affects the economy of my home. Also, I am the mother of an 18-year-old young man, and a few months ago, my son suffered an emotional crisis, anxiety, depression. I had to stay home for 3 days, taking care of my son again without payment, and returning to work with my broken heart since my son was still not feeling well. And he asked me to stay with him and not to leave him alone. But my obligations, such as bill to pay, food, housing, do not wait. And with the fear of losing my job for being away for a long time. It's sad when an illness comes home. It not only affects the person who suffers from it. The entire family is faced with dealing with a new guest. All its members need to adjust to the effects to the disease. If only you will approve this law, my story and the story of many workers will be different, since we could be absent from work, recovering from an illness, or caring for our loved ones without the fear of not having the financial income to cover the expenses. It is for this reason that I strongly support expanding paid sick days in our state and ask that the committee and the Connecticut legislators to vote favorably this year to strengthen Connecticut's paid sick days law. Please include domestic workers and make our life in Connecticut more fair and dignified. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. And it's so important to hear these stories because it does reinforce our real commitment to include all workers, because it is situations like yours that need to be brought to mind, where you don't have the bargaining power with your employer to be able to negotiate on your own for these paid sick days. And when we hear your story and what has happened to you, it strengthens our resolve that this is something that we need to make sure that every worker in Connecticut has access to paid sick days. So I truly thank you for sharing your personal story with us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Kirchner.
Next up, we have Tawanza McLean. I don't see Tawanza. Oh, Tawanza, you're in the room and you've been here all day.
Here, my name is Ann Schwartz. I'm here reading Tawanza's testimony. She is
Okay.
working her second job at the moment.
Well, thank you. I know I've seen you here all day.
She writes, my name is Tawanza McLean. I live in West Haven. I work in the endoscopy suite at Yale Health, and I am a steward for Local 34, the Union of Clerical and Technical Staff at Yale. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of HB 5164. I have worked at Yale Health for over 20 years. Early on in my career at Yale, our union was stuck in long and tough negotiations with the university. And twice in 2003, we went on strike for a week in March and then for nearly 4 weeks in August and September. It was over a month on the picket line. It was a hard decision to strike. I was a single mom raising 3 kids back then, and I needed every single paycheck to support my family. Going on strike meant no paycheck from Yale and a big hole in my budget. Picket pay helped, but I still took home a lot less money than if I had been working. So why go on strike? Because I deserved more for the work I did to care for my patients. I needed higher wages and a better retirement. Yale had the means to show more respect, and I wanted to stand up for myself and my colleagues. In the end, we won a great contract, which meant better wages and stronger pensions for me and my coworkers. But the short-term pain of striking was real. I made huge sacrifices, and it took a while for my family to recover from the financial setback of taking part in the job actions. That experience would have been easier if we had access to unemployment benefits. More workers would have been able to participate, and Yale probably would have settled sooner. That would have shortened the entire ordeal and reduced the disruption for everyone. I urge you to support this bill, which will bring more fairness to workers, and I thank you for the opportunity to testify. Have a good evening.
Thank you for reading her testimony. Next up, we have Dion Dwyer, and I believe, Dion, you're on. Let's see. I thought I saw you. Yes, there you are. I'm glad
Hi.
to see you.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Thank you. So, greetings, members of Labor and Public Employees Committee of the Connecticut General Assembly. My name is Dion Dwyer, and I live in the Black Rock area of Bridgeport, Connecticut. And I support the bill, Senate Bill number 7, an act of expanding Connecticut paid sick days. I fully back this bill 150%. The way sick days are set up in most work industries, there are limited days that one can take, and the pay for those days are not always the full amount of what you actually work. As I've worked in the healthcare field, and a couple of years back, I no longer work in that field, and also the food industry for half my life, it would benefit people in those jobs to be able to work without worrying about whether they can even afford to take a sick day off. There are times while working as a home health aide, my children were in school at the time. I always had to worry how I would manage when they had snow days or doctor's appointments as a single mother who worked and take care of her kids. This was my faith every time. Sometimes something that it was beyond my control always happens, even though it's nature, only to be told that it's something I have to get used to and live with because it's life and that happens. When I was an essential worker during the pandemic, my father, who lived in another state, had took ill and passed away during COVID at the end of 2021, December 24th, the day before Christmas. I will forever feel that this demise could have been prevented, or at least better yet delayed significantly, if I was able to take some time off from work and go assist him with his needs before it got so bad. Even when the inevitable could not be prevented, there was afterlife care that needed to be done. And for me, to heal from that also. Still, I could only afford to stay away from work only from a certain amount of time, regardless of how I felt and what time I needed. The bill still needed to be paid.
Ms. Dwyer, your time is up. If you could please conclude your remarks and members can ask questions afterwards.
Thank you. So after this experience at the pandemic, well, I should know, it should be more clear now. It's necessary for paid sick days. Currently working as a nonprofit organizer, and the importance that paid sick days Bill SB 7 is passed, eliminating the wait period time to take paid sick days from 680 hours to immediate after you start working, including all types of family structures, relationships that will allow workers to care for their child at any age and relatives or even their chosen families. This bill would also allow to take paid sick days time to care for members who are experiencing violence, in any type and way. So the number of hours of paid sick days for workers can occur to use per year. I appreciate the time and I 100% back the bill SB 7. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony tonight. And again, I want to express my appreciation for you sharing your personal story, and our condolences we're so sorry for the loss of your father and that you did not have paid time to be with him either before he died or to help with his affairs afterward. And it's very important for us to think about these situations, real life situations, when we consider this bill. So I really appreciate your staying online here and making your testimony known. So take care.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Next, we have Dolores Colon. I see Dolores is on.
Hello. Hello. Can you hear me?
We can hear
Okay.
you.
All right. I was on my bed laying, waiting for my turn. Sorry.
That's all
Better
right.
than being in Hartford. I'm getting over COVID and I get so tired. So, all right. Good afternoon, Senators Kushner, Representative Sanchez, Senator Sampson, Representative Weir, and distinguished members of the Labor and Public Employees Committee. My name is Dolores Colon. I live in New Haven, Connecticut. I am retired now, but I worked at Yale University's Beinecke Library for 30 years as a proud member of Unite Here in Local 34. I am currently a member of the Yale Union's Retiree Association and New Haven Rising. I served as alder in New Haven for 18 years and currently serve as a Democratic Town Committee member as co-chair for Ward 6, where Juan Candelaria is my representative. I thank you for the opportunity to testify tonight in support of HB 5164. I support this bill because I helped to build a union standard that helped thousands of families in the New Haven region live with economic security, dignity, and respect. When I started working at the university, my wages are so low, I qualified for food stamps. Imagine that, almost like being a Walmart worker. And the university I was forced to get support from the government because the university did not pay us enough. Co-workers and I changed the quality of these jobs by going out on strike. As a single working mother, you can imagine that going out on strike was both very hard and scary, as other people have mentioned. But through this conflict, my coworkers and I built a standard that allowed me to retire with dignity, have access to health care, and put my children through college. As an alder, I know the power of this union standard. After the Great Depression, I worked with other leaders in New Haven's Black and Hispanic caucus to call attention to the jobs crisis in New Haven's Black and brown neighborhoods. We worked with unions and New Haven Rising to push Yale University to hire qualified residents from low-income neighborhoods. Unions are key to solving the inequality in our state, and HB 5164 is one of the most effective ways unions can have this transformative power. While I am proud of my union's struggle, I believe we could have won the same transformation with less disruption for workers, the community, and the university. HB 5164 would have been a powerful incentive to have reached our settlements on much shorter timeframes and may have prevented the strikes altogether. This bill will encourage labor peace negotiation and problem solving. After the 2003 strike, we and the university committed to solving things peacefully, and we have settled every contract since then without a strike. Stronger unions were the key factor in making this labor peace possible, and there is no doubt that HB 5164 will have the same effect. Thank you for letting me be here this evening, and if you have any questions, I'm ready.
Representative Hughes.
Thank you, Dolores. I nominate to send you to the Middle East and work your same diplomacy out there. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you for the compliment.
Thank you. And I also, you remind me when you talked about how low the wages were and that you could work at a very well-endowed university, to say the least, one of the largest endowments, I believe, in the country of any private university. And yet you were not able to earn good wages. I remember when we first started organizing workers at Columbia University back in the late 1970s and early 1980s, it was often said that secretaries didn't need good wages because they were working for PIN money. You may remember that they were not recognized as supporting families, which of course, PIN money was never the case for workers, for secretaries. Most secretaries worked because they needed to help support their families. And so I remember those times, and through your work and the work of so many, we've changed that myth. And so people recognize the importance of the work and the importance of being paid properly for that work. So I appreciate all of what you did originally, but even now, continuing to work in the community. You sound like a superwoman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As do all of you who do the work that you do.
And I do have Representative Sanchez has a question for you.
Okay.
Alderwoman, how are you tonight?
Former Alderwoman, I'm well, thank you.
Still an Alderwoman. But there was some very pointed questions to help illustrate the magnitude of what a bill like this would do. And I do want to just read from it because I think helping illustrate would be very effective as we would like to help understand the bill a lot more. How long did it take you to make up financial ground after being on strike, if you can remember?
Well, I got there in 92 and I was on strike like just after passing probation. I started in January and I think there was a strike that following April or something. And due to the contract that we got by going on strike, I was able to get off food stamps because I made like $50 more. You know what I mean? And it was remarkable that in the first place, when I thought I got a full-time job there, I thought I would be more stable financially. But lo and behold, I reported to the department of, where I got the food stamps from over there on Bassett Street in New Haven, that, hey, I got a job. I don't need your food stamps anymore. They said, oh yeah, well, how much are you making now? And they said, oh no, you still qualify, girl. So to not qualify was a big deal for me because I felt like I was truly providing for my family myself. And there's a need for that because everybody thinks that when you're on food stamps, you're lazy, you don't want to work, that you could be doing better. You know what? You're just getting you're on the dole. You're not really reaching your full potential. They think the worst of you because you're getting assistance from the government. And that works on your psyche. That works on your self-esteem. So to have a good union job that lets me pay for me and me provide for my children, it was very, very uplifting. So it didn't take long, that first contract while I started working in 92. So it must have been, 92. That's when I got there at the right time. Let me say that.
Thank you
And
for
I
that.
knew
Alderwoman, I just had a second part to that question. How would the ability of collective unemployment benefits made a difference to you and your family during that difficult time?
It would have made a big difference because I wouldn't have felt so scared for my children. I said, I mean, it's funny when you're on the picket line with your fellow workers, you try to be brave because you figure they're being brave and you don't want to complain or share that you're afraid that, you hope your kids don't need a pair of shoes in the winter while you're out there on strike. And so I've never really had that kind of conversation with my fellow workers, but you are afraid that, you know, you lapse on your rent. You're afraid that you won't be able to, you know, have breakfast in 2 days for your kids. You know, you are as a single mother, you're constantly afraid that you will not be able to provide for your children. You don't really care about yourself. You want to make sure the kids eat, that they have clothes, that they have food, that they have a place that's warm and safe. These are the things that, you know, people that have never been on strike won't ever know, because they rather cross the picket line and be safe and not go put themselves through that test of being strong to fight for something that you know you deserve and you need, that respect and the proper financial compensation for the work that you do.
Thank you so much, Alderman.
Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony here tonight. Any other comments or questions from the committee? I don't see any hands, so thank you for being with us and have a good night.
You're very welcome. Bye. And thank you for the opportunity.
Next up, we have Frank Douglas, also from New Haven Board of Alders. And I see, is that Ann again? Is it Ann?
Yes, Alder Douglas is also working this evening, so I will read his statement. My name is Frank Douglas. I am the Alder of Ward 2 on the New Haven Board of Alders, and I am a retired member of Unite Here Local 35. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I support HB 5164 as an elected official and as a retired union member. I was a cook at Yale University and a member of Local 35 for over 20 years. I went on strike in 1996 and 2003 for better wages and retirement. I also saw that Black workers often got stuck in the bottom tier, unable to get well-earned promotions to grow their careers. We were also fighting for the homebuyer program so that people could afford to live close to where they worked and be involved in the community. That victory was a big part of me getting active in politics, having a stable home to raise my family and get involved with community issues. We didn't get a paycheck while we were on strike, so my family and my coworkers' families really struggled to make ends meet. The union did food drives to keep people fed while they made the enormous sacrifice. But every day we stayed out, it became more difficult. One day I spotted 2 busloads of people Yale was trying to bring in to break the strike. Yale wanted to pit non-union Latino workers against Black union workers. But when we talked and realized our shared interests, we realized that without the power of strikes, we would not have our benefits or living wages. Thanks to these contracts, no Local 35 member will retire in poverty. It's important for me to strike because my children and grandchildren had a different future, different stability and opportunities, and more pride in their city. If we had had unemployment, I can only imagine how many more jobs would pay livable wages, how many more families would be able to afford decent housing or send their kids to college as I have been able to do. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you for reading that testimony. I know that Frank is not here to respond to any questions, but I do want to say that in his testimony, he talks about busloads coming in to break the strike. And, you know, there's been some questions raised about whether or not we're creating through this legislation, we would be benefiting employees in their tipping the balance for negotiations. But it did bring to mind that when I first started organizing workers, you could not permanently replace a worker for going out on strike. And there's a change, and it was ruled that it was legal for employers to do that, to permanently replace workers who chose to engage in striking. And so there are many ways in which federal labor law does advantage employers to have that economic threat over the heads of workers when they decide to go out on strike. So there are many things that are in the law currently that I think benefit employers in that situation. So I'm glad he mentioned that. It reminded me of that. Next up, we have Evelyn Rodriguez. Is Evelyn with us or online? I don't see her. Next, we have Hermelinda Gutierrez. Hermelinda. And I don't see her. Karen Prescott. Mustafa Salahuddin. I saw Mustafa earlier. Yes, number 162. Mustafa, please unmute yourself.
Yes, I'm here. Can you see me?
Yes, I know you've been there for a while.
Yeah, it's all right. It's all right. I got a lot of work done during this segment. Well, I want to start by saying good evening to Senator Kushner, Representative Sanchez, Senator Sampson, Representative Ware, and the distinguished members of the Labor and Public Employees Committee. My name is Mustafa Salahuddin, and I am the president and business agent of the Amalgamated Transit Union Local 1336 out of Bridgeport, Connecticut, and I also reside in Bridgeport, Connecticut. I want to start off by saying that I've been the president, and I've been in this position for 10 years at this location, and I came close, very close to striking on 2 occasions, but we were able to work things out. And that's not the case for everybody. But what I did, but I've during this time, I've been on several strikes, showing solidarity to others who could not work out their differences. So this is near and dear to me. And I'm also in favor of the paid sick days, but I have to come and speak in regards to this matter because this is very important. And I'm just going to, in the interest of time, I'm just going to read 3 things that I highlighted. Unemployment insurance provides a vital source of temporary partial income to workers who lose their jobs or have their hours reduced through no fault of their own, due to layoffs, plant closures, or lack of available work. Workers who were fired from their jobs for willful misconduct are not eligible to receive these benefits. Unemployment insurance benefits should be a universal right for individuals who have recently lost their jobs, are unable to find work, or are in the middle of a labor dispute. They are crucial to provide workers with the support they need to take care of themselves and their families during difficult times. When striking workers can pay the rent and afford groceries, it creates a safety net in their families, small businesses, and entire community. Economists estimate that every $1 spent on unemployment benefits generates $2 worth of economic activity that helps sustain local retail outlets, child care facilities, and other community businesses during a dispute. HB 5164 will not enrich workers. Unemployment benefits are intended to help workers and their families during tough times. For most, they provide 50% wage replacement for the maximum duration of 26 weeks. It is an economic lifeline, not a lucrative bonus that encourages workers to strike or remain on strike. I've never met anyone who wanted to go on strike. Matter of fact, even when my members have alluded to strike, it was very shaken. So, I believe this bill, and I support this, and we support this wholeheartedly, will correct that and give an even playing field. All of the testimonies today have been outstanding. And I didn't know how I could continue to reiterate or regurgitate the message. But the one thing, the 3 that stuck out to me most was Senator Martin Looney, Rebecca Damon, and Ed Hawthorne. I want to thank those 3 in particular, and everyone else that came out, stayed this long, weathered the storm, to give their testimonies. To be redundant in this is necessary. And that's why I stayed to the end, because, you know, a lot of people don't like redundancy, but sometimes redundancy is necessary. And this was one of those times. Thank you very much. And for your time, and thank you for hearing me out. And God bless you all. And safe travels tonight when you leave.
Thank you for your testimony. And I agree with you. Redundancy is important. It emphasizes the need. And sometimes we need to hear that in the legislature. I also want to say that I see your ATU sign behind you on the Zoom frame there. I know that the work that you do is important. In Danbury, our bus drivers are represented by ATU
Yes, ma'am.
62. And the president there, Oswaldo Chin, he
Yes.
point to participate in local government issues and state government issues, and really appreciate your participation, and nice to meet you.
And appreciate you, and nice to meet you as well.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you for your time tonight. Next, we have Krister Estrada. Is Krister? Yes, I see you here.
Hello, I'm here.
I don't know if you want to turn on your camera, but we can hear you for sure.
I am en route. I had to pull over, so I can't turn on my camera. I am safely parked, but I can go ahead and get started with my testimony, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Go right ahead.
Thank you so much. So good afternoon, members of the Labor and Public Employees Committee. My name is Krister Estrada Perez, and I am a proud resident of Hartford, Connecticut. As someone who struggles with a chronic illness, I stand before you to support Senate Bill 7. This legislation is not merely a matter of policy. It is a lifeline for countless individuals, including myself, who grapple with a chronic health condition like asthma. Living in a city where a significant portion of our population, especially children, suffer from asthma due to environmental injustices and racism, I am all too familiar with the harsh realities of this condition. I have personally experienced the debilitating and terrifying effects of severe asthma attacks. The fear and panic that accompany these moments are indescribable. Because we know that 10 people die of asthma in the US each day, we understand how dire the consequences of an asthma attack are. In the last 2 years, I have been rushed to the hospital for asthma attacks by ambulance on at least 3 different occasions. In one of those instances, I was leading a statewide campaign when I started to feel short of breath. It was a Saturday and I was working from home when I felt that familiar wheezing of an asthma attack. Because I am a long life sufferer, I implemented my emergency plan care, but I wasn't working. I had to call the ambulance, but I hesitated because I could not afford the ambulance. That hesitation almost took my life. By the time I called the ambulance, I was so out of breath that I was sweating, nauseous, panting, and about to pass out. The ambulance rushed me to the hospital where a team of nurses and doctors did everything they could to bring my asthma under control. I was hospitalized for 4 days. Following that event, I had several appointments at a pulmonologist's office to get new medicine and a new long-term care plan. These appointments were during working hours and often require navigating a of health insurance and specialist pharmacists, which were both time-consuming and overwhelming. All of these things require that I take time off from work, so we need to expand Connecticut access to paid sick days. These experiences are not isolated incidents to me, but examples of the struggles many Connecticut residents face who lack access to paid sick days. No one should have to choose between their health and their livelihood, yet for far too many, this remains an unbearable reality. Senate Bill 7 presents a pivotal opportunity to rectify this injustice and ensure that all workers, regardless of employer size or industry, have access to essential paid sick time. By aligning our eligibility and accrual rates with neighboring states, we can give workers the peace of mind that comes with knowing they don't have to choose between their health and their paycheck, which is a decision that many Connecticut residents are having to make today. I urge you to support Senate Bill 7 and stand on the right side of history by championing the fundamental right for paid sick leave, for paid sick days. Together, we can build a more equitable and compassionate Connecticut where residents don't have to sacrifice their health for their economic injustices.
Thank you for your testimony, and I do hope that you are feeling better soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Any comments or questions? Okay, next up we have Gretchen Raffa. Also, you've been here all day.
We've all been here all day, so thank you. Oh, goodness. Yes, it's been a long day. Thank you, Senator Kushner, Representative Sanchez, and members of the Labor and Public Employees Committee. My name's Gretchen Raffa, Vice President of Public Policy Advocacy and Organizing with Planned Parenthood of Southern New England, testifying in support of Senate Bill 7, an act concerning Connecticut paid sick days. Planned Parenthood believes all people should have access to quality, affordable health care as a basic human right, as well as the ability and resources to make their own healthcare decisions, regardless of who you are, where you live, or your income. And as advocates of reproductive freedom, we must consider all aspects of a person's life, including those that affect their economic stability and their ability to care for themselves and their family with dignity. We know firsthand through our patients, their stories we see in our health centers every day, the juggling act that they have to play to pay each month to pay their bills, to care for their families, and meet their basic needs. That's why we were so proud to be part of the campaign to pass our state paid sick leave law in 2011. But as you have heard today, it's well past time to improve our law because it leaves far too many workers behind. And we all know that not having paid sick days remains a significant barrier for people to access the health care they need, including essential reproductive health care. Workers without paid sick days are less likely to go to the doctor and access preventative care such as cancer screenings, pap smears, flu shots, annual physicals. This is an urgent racial, reproductive, and justice issue. We urge the committee to support Senate Bill 7, but it's not going far enough to truly modernize our paid sick day law. And in fact, would still leave many workers behind, including LGBTQ+ individuals, single individuals, childless adults, and more. After signing one of the most inclusive family definitions in our paid family medical leave law, which we were very proud to partner with the legislature and administration on, this is absolutely unacceptable to have a more limiting definition of family in updating our paid sick day law. Families are constantly evolving and taking many forms, including blended families, single parent families, LGBTQ+ families, chosen families, and multi-generational families. We urge the committee to amend the bill language to align with our state paid family leave law, because any policy that leaves families who are most marginalized in our state out is unfair and unjust. And on a personal note, I'm a little discouraged to be sitting in front of this committee again and sharing my story again. But I've aged a little bit as a 50-year-old queer woman, non-married person with no children. Having a more inclusive paid sick day policy is critical because it would include members outside my blood family to also include my chosen family. The chosen family that I have personally relied on and has served as caregivers to me when I was ill, and in every sense of the word, they are my family. I play the role of aunt, not only to a blood relative, but to many of my close friends' children, and I'm there as in a caretaker role when their parents are unable to care for them. So again, we urge you to support Senate Bill 7 to protect the basic rights of Connecticut workers with the recommended expansion of family definition and make the best expansion to our paid sick day law. This improvement with amended language will allow time to care for extended family and loved ones that don't share biological or legal ties, and along with our paid family medical leave policy, will guarantee and promote the health and economic security of all Connecticut families and ensure that all families get the support they need to balance their work and family and to thrive. We thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you for your testimony. I think you were here when I spoke about this earlier, about this issue around the definition of family. I know that when we started out with Senate Bill 1178 last year, had a broader definition that mirrored the paid family medical leave bill and or statutes. And then we were in a position where we felt we needed to compromise in order to get the bill passed. I think your testimony is very important in reminding us about what that actually means when we made that compromise, and something that we really need to consider. I do know that recently there was an announcement that paid family medical leave, which has now paid benefits for 100,000 workers in Connecticut. I don't know if you're aware, I think there was some information out today about how many of those people who are making those claims or have benefited from from these benefits, if you know how many were actually would have been covered by the expanded definition of family?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Senator Kushner, because that's really important. And just to reemphasize that we can't leave families out. We can't, and this definition will. The Paid Leave Authority has received 23,593 claims relating to care of a family member. 394 of those were for a person who is equivalent to a family relationship. So a very small amount of people have utilized the benefit for, again, chosen family and a family member that isn't a blood relative. So a very small percentage, but an important benefit that people need in Connecticut with paid sick day policy too.
Thank you. Thank you. I had a feeling you had that information, and it is important because even though it's a small number, the impact on those 395 or 394 people you mentioned is significant. So I appreciate your bringing that information forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks
so
being
much
here.
for sticking out on a very long day.
Next up, we have Jennifer Jennings. Is Jennifer with us? I don't see anyone. Then we'll go to 166, Teresa Morant. Teresa is here on Zoom. I see you. If you would unmute yourself, you can go ahead and testify.
Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Teresa Morant. Good evening to Senator Kushner, Representative Sanchez, Senator Sampson, Representative Ware, and the distinguished members of the Labor and Public Employees Committee. My name is Teresa Morant, and I am the Alder of Ward 12 in the New Haven Board of Alders. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of HB 5164. I support HB 5164 as an elected official and a union member. I recall some time ago, I went on a strike when I was working for the telephone company. And as I worked for the phone company, we were on strike for, I say, a lot of weeks. And because we needed better wages, retirement, etc., it was important to me to strike because we have to stick together to get these things done. And sticking together, it could cost a lot of sacrifices that we have to make. But united we stand and divided we fall. When I was on that strike, I just recall how it impacted my finances, which in turn impacted my family. I am a mom of 4 boys, and it is imperative that the structure that I have stands. And if that's disrupted, then it causes disruption to my whole family. I just recall, because at that time, for sure, we weren't able to collect unemployment. It caused a lot of heartache. Bills got behind. We should not, as parents, have to choose whether we want to have the rights that we should have as employees or feeding our families and keeping a roof over our heads. We should never, ever, ever have to make that choice. But we should be able to stand proudly and boldly for what we believe in, to get the job done, to make, if we have to go on strike, that everything will still stay into place. We shouldn't have to use our vacation time up. It's almost like you're getting penalized behind the scenes. It's almost like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. And we should never be in that position. It would have been different if I was able to collect, because I would have been able to keep everything flowing. Sometimes the burden for people that may give up or can no longer do it is because their finances are affected by what they believe in. And that should never be the case. As a member of the New Haven Board of Alders, We continue to call attention to the job crisis in New Haven, Black and brown neighborhoods. And we have worked with unions in our community to push large employers like Yale to hire New Haven residents into good union jobs. Union jobs benefit not only union workers, but their families, their neighborhoods, and our entire community.
Alderwoman
But
Moran.
Connecticut law favors employers. Boo. During a labor dispute by denying unemployment to workers who are striking to support for themselves and their families. Unemployment insurance benefits should be a universal right for individuals
Alderwoman
who have
Moran.
recently, yes,
Your time is up. If you could please conclude your remarks and you can answer questions afterwards.
okay. Unemployment insurance benefits should be universal right. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Alderperson. I apologize. When I called you, I didn't give you the honor of your title. Apologize for that. I wasn't reading across the page, but it was very good to have your testimony here tonight. Are there any members of the committee who would like to comment or ask a question? Okay, seeing none, thank you for hanging in there tonight and being with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next on the list is Ann Schwartz. Now it's Ann Schwartz. This is the real Ann Schwartz, right? You see, if you were really old, you would know the reference. With the real Ann Schwartz, please stand up. It was an old TV program. Yeah. All of you are too young to remember it.
There's another version of that.
I said, with the real Ann Schwartz, please stand up. I'm sorry, it's getting late and we're getting a little silly up here. But thank you, Ann.
Good evening. Thank you for listening to so many Ann Schwartzes tonight. I am a proud member of Local 34. I first got my job in Local 34 when I was 26 years old. I was a month away from no longer being eligible to be on my parents' health insurance. I had epilepsy. I was having seizures. I couldn't drive a car. And I remember really clearly coming to my first union meeting when I heard that the leaders had just settled a contract where they held out to make sure that new union members had the same health benefits as existing union members. They pushed back against that two-tiered system, which is something that we know about a lot in the labor movement that often leads to strikes. And it was so clear to me in that moment that people had been fighting for me in Local 34 as long as I had been alive. And it's not a coincidence that today you've gotten to hear from a mother and a daughter and a mother and a son, because these people, they've gone on strike for their children and their grandchildren. And as we've said today, HB 5164 incentivizes an employer to remain at the table and negotiate in good faith to avoid a strike. I've never had to go on strike. It's because Renee and Cheryl and Beth and Barbara and Jess and Sarah and Rebecca and Dolores and Tawanza, who you heard from today, and so many other people, they set the tone for Yale that we need HB 5164 to set for the rest of Connecticut, that employers should come to the table, avoid a strike, and agree to fair contracts. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony here tonight and for all the recognition of the speakers that went before you from Yale. It was a very important time at Yale University, and we appreciate your testimony. Any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to then go back to number 161, Karen Prescott. Karen, I see you are online now. And if you can unmute yourself. Karen Prescott. Go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Oh, okay. I think I'm off camera, but I'd like to stay that way if that's okay.
It's fine. Go right ahead.
Okay, let me just pull up my. Dear members of Labor and Public Employees Committee of the Connecticut General Assembly, my name is Corinne Prescott. I support Senate Bill number 7, an act expanding Connecticut paid sick days. Paid sick days should elevate Obviously, I'm in Connecticut. I live in Manchester, Connecticut. Paid sick days should be a human right for everyone who works. Capitalism, racism, and ableism gatekeep my basic human right to need time to recover from illness. This makes it virtually impossible for marginalized folks like myself to adequately care for myself, my children, our partners, our loved ones, and our friends. Yes, this is a racial justice issue. It is a racial justice issue to expand the definition of family to be reflective of many different communities in Connecticut. Black, brown, and indigenous communities are known for taking care of folks who are not related by blood. We have informally adopted kids, nieces and nephews, and others into our family because we have to and want to, and because we truly believe it takes a village. Forcing us to ignore the people in our village who we call family because we don't have that same understanding is racism. Waiting 680 hours is an act of violence against the working class. This is also ableist. When will you and when will the elites understand that if we do not have to stress about who was going to care for our best friend after their third round of chemo, we can focus on our job, bringing up our productivity. More importantly, I can keep my friend alive. COVID-19, the flu, long COVID, MS, bipolar disorder, lupus, sickle cell, cancer, doesn't give a damn about legislation or HR policy or waiting periods. It takes when it wants and gives you no time to prepare. As a Black, queer, disabled woman, I struggle financially simply because I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, complex migraines, and a non-cancerous brain tumor. In September, I had a complex migraine that looked as though I had a stroke. The stress flared up my MS. I had just started a new job and I had to use all my personal time because I did not have sick time. I could not get a full check after that because I did not have enough personal time. How am I supposed to work if there isn't a real safety net for my needs? Months later, my MS flared up. I went from walking on my own to using a cane. I sobbed because I knew I needed to see my doc and take a few days off, but I couldn't since I had gotten sick a few months prior. I want to work. Let me reiterate that. I want to work, but I had no option to apply for Social Security. However, who can live off of $1,500 a month? I'm a mother of 3. And so this makes me a family of 4, not me, not when rent in Connecticut is $1,100 for a studio. I want to work. I can work, but I need help. White supremacy tells me to pull myself up by my bootstraps. So despite my MS, brain tumor, migraines, PTSD, bipolar, and chronic anxiety, I work. Despite all of that, I work. And then I get sick. And when I get sick, I am purposely excluded. Pass this bill and purposely include us. I have been unable to keep jobs because I live in a world that prioritizes what you can produce or do and how fast you can get it done versus taking care of your health and your village. It is a shame that employers and our government still haven't figured out that if you take care of those that are viewed as having the least, then we can all be taken care of. We, the people, the workers, deserve this. We, the people, the workers who keep Connecticut running and going, deserve this. We are the oil that keeps America's engines running. Capitalism does not run on Dunkin'. It runs on the working class like myself, and we get sick. Our kids get sick. Our partners, our loved ones get sick. Whether they are blood related or not, they get sick just like yours does. Just like the CEOs does. Why are they entitled to help and not us? Thank you so much, Corinne Prescott.
Thank you, Karen, for your testimony and for sharing with us the personal struggles that you've endured and your strong desire to work. I totally understand that perspective and appreciate it. Do any members of the committee want to comment or ask questions? Thank you for your testimony tonight.
Thank you.
Next up, we have, we're going to go to 165, Jennifer Jennings.
Good evening, and thank you for going back to me. My name is Jen Jennings. I'm the Executive Director of the Connecticut Heating and Cooling Contractors Association, representing the interests of 85% of the Connecticut mechanical and HVAC industry. I was upstairs in general law providing some testimony. It was educational in itself, and certainly a long afternoon up there. I imagine equally as long down here. On behalf of the association, we oppose Senate Bill 137 as it imposes burdensome requirements on contractors for public utility projects. Mandating apprenticeship or pre-apprenticeship programs may disproportionately affect businesses without educational training programs. Not all contractors are sponsors to apprenticeship, particularly smaller enterprises. This creates an unfair trade practice, limiting opportunities for capable contractors who may not engage in such training programs. The bill fails to recognize diverse business models and threatens the competitiveness of smaller shops. We should encourage flexibility and innovation in the industry rather than imposing a one-size-fits-all regulation that could hinder economic growth and job creation here in Connecticut. Further, the association opposes Senate Bill 7, Senate Bill 12, and House Bill 5166. Mandating paid sick leave across all industries and employer sizes in Connecticut, in addition to the state's existing paid sick leave policy, could be detrimental to the state's economy. Such a move might impose unnecessary burden on businesses, particularly small enterprises, leading to increased operational costs and potential job losses. The redundancy of implementing a dual system, in addition to the current state recent paid sick leave that the state had passed, may create confusion for employers, making compliance challenging and resource intensive. Moreover, a one-size-fits-all approach may not consider the unique needs and capacities of various industries, potentially stifling innovation and hindering economic growth. Excessive regulatory environment, discouraging business investment and expansion in the state of Connecticut. Instead of piling on additional requirements, it may be more beneficial for Connecticut's economy to focus on supporting businesses through targeted initiatives, fostering a competitive and conducive environment for growth. Policymakers should carefully consider the potential negative consequences of duplicative regulations and aim for a balanced approach that promotes economic vitality while addressing the well-being of workers here in the state of Connecticut. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Acker.
And thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being here. So I struggled with the first bill you mentioned, also regarding the training component. I mean, we always want to have people well-trained, but looking at the state's apprenticeship program systems, I didn't see that all the utilities would be represented by the state of Connecticut. I know that your organization, you have, I think, at least a couple different apprenticeship paths, heating and cooling and sheet metal. Did you see, that's my struggle with this bill, and is that I don't think that there's a state apprenticeship program in the state of Connecticut right now that this bill would work with.
I'm in agreement with you there. I don't believe that there is an apprenticeship program specific that would fit this bill, but if they are using it as that the contractor be mandated to have an apprenticeship program, so whether it be an electrician who is required to have some form of E program, or a HVAC contractor who is required to have a D or an S apprenticeship program. If it's a smaller contractor and possibly maybe it's a mom and pop shop and there's just maybe 2 of them working and they just don't have an apprenticeship program, I don't really think that should hinder them from bidding a job that falls under this. And I just worry a little bit that we're putting mandates and restrictions in there that ultimately could hurt our business climate here in Connecticut.
Yeah, I'd have a different position on it myself if there was some structure that the Department of Apprenticeship Programs in the state of Connecticut had at sponsorship level, because I don't see it. But I thank you for your testimony. I thank you for the time, Madam Chair.
I do have a question about something that you just said. You said that if it was a 2-person mom and pop contracting business, that they would be disadvantaged. The thresholds that are required under the statute for these public works projects, for these public utilities companies, I think the threshold, and I'm sure Representative Ackert knows this very well, but I believe it's $1 million for new construction. Is that correct?
I believe so.
And for insurance reasons?
No, I'm saying for prevailing wage.
Davis Bacon.
Oh.
But
Is that correct?
yes, yeah, I believe that is the threshold.
New construction.
Right.
New construction.
Right,
So,
but-
yeah, so I guess if there's a repair job or a renew, so
Or
yeah, it's $1
renovation,
million.
I believe it's
Yeah, if
100.
it's like $1 million is for the prevailing wage component. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was just curious if these mom and pop shops are bidding on $1 million projects. Is that common?
I don't know, quite possibly it could be, but I would just hate to see legislation painted with a broad stroke that would potentially eliminate their opportunity to participate in it from the training component. Not all contractors are invested necessarily in apprenticeship. I think the vast majority of mine are. However, it doesn't mean that they all are. And I think it creates an unfair trade practice, especially when it being utility, any municipal, state, or government work, or a utility that we are saying only a certain business model fits. I just think it's poor business for the business community in Connecticut.
I was just curious because it did seem like it would be unlikely a small two-person operation could handle $1 million construction job. But I don't have any other questions. Is there anyone else?
Yeah, so I think that some of the federal money though coming down, I don't know if there's a stipulation on size of projects. So, but the price of underground utility equipment right now is probably not too many jobs are under $1 million, but yeah, so it's a point well taken. But I think some of the federal requirements are going to be not size specific for jobs.
But I do believe this bill, I know that it cites the statute, the prevailing, we had that testimony earlier that it does cite the statute for prevailing wage that has those thresholds in it. And there's no proposal at this time to change those thresholds. So thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Any other? Representative Weir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank you. Just a brief statement. One of the things I haven't heard today, although we talk, at least I haven't heard it with my ears, talking about the one size fits all approach. I think that that's going to give me pause to go back through the legislation and review many pieces of testimony that we've heard today. I appreciate your input.
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So my first question would be for many of your members, what's the average size you would say of your members' companies or businesses?
About 15 employees is the average size. We have some with upward of 250 employees and others that are truly 2.
And through you, Madam Chairwoman, my next question would be, what percentage of your members currently offer some type of PTO, vacation, so on and so forth?
Every single one of my contractors.
So essentially, if they're doing that, part of the other SB 712, as well as the other bills, wouldn't necessarily affect them in some regard.
Right. So it makes it more of a challenge as far as how they're presenting the benefits to the employee. They give a package and it's PTO. So it's personal time off. However, it's selected to be used. But I feel like if we're going to start to move things around, if they give, I'm going to make up 2 weeks a year in personal time. And again, that is not by any means an average. It's a arbitrary number I just pulled. But 2 weeks of time, whether that's broken down in vacation time, sick time, personal days off, it would be the 2 weeks. So to require in addition for the expectation to be that they're going to get their vacation time, and then in addition, this paid sick time to be accrued at the rate of this, I think becomes a challenge for the employer.
So through you, Madam Chairwoman, and you actually, probably you can answer this. This current bill does not add any additional time they would be able to use that package, correct? That they currently have.
That is correct. If the employer is providing paid time off, PTO, and the employees can use it for sick time, then that is considered in compliance. And so they would not have to keep an additional 40 hours paid time off, as long as it's some kind of paid time off that can be used for illness or the illness of a family member.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate both of your clarifications on that, and I will certainly take that back to my legislative team and membership.
And great, that's why we have these conversations. The other thing that I think you referred to was the paid family leave. And this, I didn't know at the end when you said there would be duplicative benefits. So paid family medical leave, I'm sure you're aware, all employees participate in, but it's limited to serious illnesses. So for instance, when somebody got COVID, which we all consider a serious illness, I'm sure, after what we've been through, unfortunately, the paid family medical leave program does not provide time unless there was a serious enough case where they were hospitalized and they had long COVID. In the case where you had to be isolating for 5 to 10 days, that was not covered by the paid family medical leave program. And I think it's an important distinction to point out because these are two separate programs. Paid sick days is specifically for short-term illnesses that don't rise to that level of a serious illness. So, you know, I think that's why there's been so much testimony about how important it is. We did in 2019 enact a paid family medical leave program that, as you heard today, probably you may have heard 100,000 workers in Connecticut have made use of this program now, but it's only for serious illness, not for an illness like a flu or a cold.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in this late.
Thank you.
Now you can go back to general law. Well, I hope they're not done because I think we were trying to get done before them. Isn't that true? Okay, next up we have DeAndre Brown. Is DeAndre with us? I don't see him here. Oh, he was here earlier? Okay, next up then we have Daniel Catagon. And Daniel, I know you are online. And Daniel.
I am. I took my dog and pony show on the road, so I apologize. I'm in my vehicle.
That's all right.
I greatly appreciate you allowing me to walk on like this. As you know, through the email that I missed the 3 o'clock cutoff. Real quickly, I am a locomotive engineer with the Teamsters Rail Conference. I work up in Boston, but my jurisdiction is all of New England. And I just had SB 7 and SB 12. I'd like to testify for, as well as HB 5164. And real quick, because it's late and you guys have heard this 1,000 times. There's a Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD. It's about 30 countries around the world that collectively group together information. And off of their website, I found that the average U.S. worker works about 1,811 hours annually. We're ranked 12th behind the number 1, Colombia, which is 2,405. I personally worked 2,774 hours last year for the railroad up in Massachusetts. And my point is, I personally worked 50% more than the average American. And I did this as a frontline essential worker on the computer rail system. I'm a father, a husband, a union rep. I deal with the public every day. As far back as 97, I've been doing this. And all through COVID, while most of the country was shut down and working from home, I did this. And I did all of this without a single sick day. And that's a battle that we're fighting in Massachusetts. But I just thought what's happening to me in Massachusetts is pertinent because this happens to the railroad all over the country. And I would like to see the railroad get more included in these amendments to the law. And that real quick. And then the striking, the 5164, you know, the National Labor Relations Act and the Social Security Act came into play in the middle of the Depression in 35. And while we can't go back to all of their logic at the time, we can certainly apply 2024 logic to it and update those near century old documents to today's way of life. But looking back, and I'm going to jump around just because I know it's short time and you guys want to go home. But if someone were to take unemployment, the maximum benefit is $726 for 26 weeks in Connecticut. It's only $18,746. If that was your entire income, you would be trending below the poverty line for a family of 2, the federal poverty line. I read an article in the USA Today. The Bureau of Labor and Statistics ranked Connecticut the 5th highest annual salary at $78,572. I wouldn't have believed it out of the paper, but it is on the Bureau of Labor and Statistics site. And so based on that, if you were to get an entire year of unemployment, this is just to point out that this unemployment is not earth-shattering money here. If you were to get an entire year, double the allotment Connecticut allows, you would still be only at 48% of the average income in the state of Connecticut. Now, so that in and of itself just shows the disparity. So if it's at 48 and we're only getting half of that, it's only 24% of the average income reported by the federal government in Connecticut. And we're really just asking for an even playing field. But to continue to restrict the access to basic unemployment benefits for people, some people are actually deciding between food on the table and just taking an unfair agreement because they cannot afford to be out of work. Now, I'm not in that situation, but I have been in my earlier college days. I ate a lot of ramen noodles and was lucky to get just that sometimes. But either way, when strikes come about, they're not exactly optional. And if someone said it not that long ago, that they had coworkers that went 20, 30 years after a strike where they crossed the picket line, and they did not fare well afterwards. So these are not voluntary things. And what if you were the one person that voted against the strike and you still had to go out? So I think that takes out the voluntary portion of this equation. And with that, one other thing, I'll sum this up really quick. There was an earlier argument at about 10:30 this morning that they're talking about small businesses and how it affects these companies with 50. And I know we're trying to lower the number to 50, but if you take the bare minimum, the $15.69 minimum wage in the state of Connecticut, and you do out the math for 50 employees at 40 hours a week over the course of a year, that is before tax ramifications to a company. That's a $1.63 million payroll. I don't know any small businesses that have a $1.6 million payroll. And there was a lot of talk throughout the day about mom and pop shops and 2-people operations. And what about the diners with only 2 people? And I don't know of any diner, under the existing law that employs 50 people. You can't see it in here, but I've visited the occasional diner. But these are just astronomical numbers. And to say that dropping these numbers to include more people, the 1.6 million people that don't have sick time right now, pun intended, this is making me sick. This sick time law is making me sick. That people are actually fighting against this because it's such a horrific thing and it's a detriment to the state of Connecticut and human race. I don't know the crazy that went on today with some of the people's angles, but I digress. I apologize for going a little off kilter there, but I do appreciate you allowing me to speak today and also letting me come on late as it was. And I learned my lesson. I will sign up before 3:00 next time.
Yeah, I know. People who are at the end of the list appreciate the fact that it would be better to sign up quickly when the list goes up.
I will be waiting for that email the next time.
I do. I think it is important, though, that you testified here today because I have heard from some railroad employees.
All great people, I'm sure, right?
Employees that they don't have paid sick days. And I think it was important to hear from you. It is something we need to look at when we are drafting to see if their railroad employees would be included or whether they would be excluded. I don't think we intentionally excluded them, but we would certainly want to take a look at that. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. Are there any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you for hanging in there tonight.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Then next up, I see Jenny Cornejo is on Zoom.
Hello, I need the interpretation, please.
Sir, certainly. Hold on, momentito.
Okay, thank you.
Hola, Jennifer, me llamo Xochitl, le voy a ayudar a interpretar, ¿ok?
Okay. Gracias. Estimados miembros del comité
Permítame un
de
momento.
trabajo.
Jennifer.
Okay.
Decir que te deje un momentito. Ok. Ok, muchísimas gracias. Jennifer, por favor, voy a hablar en primera persona, so por favor hable lento y en sentencias cortas, ¿ok? Please
Okay.
I'm gonna speak in first person. Please speak short sentences so I can interpret correctly. Puedes seguir.
Estimados miembros del Comité de Trabajo y empleados públicos de la Asamblea General de Connecticut.
Your committee members and ¿me puede repetir qué dijo más? ¿Qué más dijo?
Del Comité de Trabajo y empleados públicos de la Asamblea General de Connecticut.
And committee members of the Assembly of Workers.
Soy Jenny Cornejo, vivo en East Haven por 6 años.
I'm Jenny Cordejo, and I've lived in East Hartford for 6 years.
Soy miembro de Unidad Latina por 5 años y actualmente soy coordinadora comunitaria.
I've been a member of, ¿me repite el nombre de la asociación?
Unidad Latina en Acción.
Unidad Latina en Acción for 5 years, and I'm the coordinator.
Estas historias que uno tiene desde que llega uno como migrante son muy tristes porque
All the stories that we have as immigrants, they're really, really sad because, siga.
Porque cuando tú llegas a un trabajo y estás enfermo y especialmente COVID, no te dan permiso para ir a descansar.
Because when you are sick, like let's say, for example, with COVID, they don't let you go out and, take, have a good recovery and rest.
En tiempos de COVID, tuve la mala experiencia de trabajar con COVID y el empleador se estaba vigilando por la ventana.
When COVID was around, I had the bad experience of having to go to work with COVID, and the employee was looking at me through the window.
Debido a que necesitaba tener esos días porque tenía que pagar renta y biles.
I had to go to work because I was in need to pay the rent and the bills.
Y en esos tiempos no sabía mis derechos. Poco a poco he ido aprendiendo.
At that time, I didn't know about my rights.
Entonces, a través de ahorita de que soy organizadora comunitaria en Unidad Latina en Acción, pues luchamos por los derechos y vemos tantas injusticias.
So now that I have the opportunity to be an organizer, we fight for the rights of the workers.
Muchas compañeras, muchas miembros no pueden dejar sus trabajos porque son amenazadas por el manager.
A lot of coworkers cannot leave their jobs because they suffer from retaliation from the employers.
Ellos le dicen que si dejan de trabajar, pues les van a quitar las horas y si es posible el empleo.
So they tell us, like, if we do not go to work, they're going to cut our hours or even fire us.
Muchas trabajadoras del hogar que son miembros activas de Unidad Latina en Acción tienen que dejar sus hijos a manos de hermanas mayores o familiares cercanos.
So a lot of the members of the Unidad Latina en Acción are forced to leave their kids with family members, sometimes sisters, to take care of their children.
Por eso es muy importante que se amplíe la ley de enfermedades pagadas y yo apoyo a la ley SB7.
That's why I think it's really important to support this petition, and I do actually support the SB7 petition.
Espero que el comité y los legisladores de Connecticut voten favorablemente este año para reforzar los días de enfermedad pagadas de Connecticut.
I hope the members of the committee vote in favor of this bill to pass the law SB7 for the.
Gracias.
Thank you very much. Gracias. Good night. Buenas noches. Gracias. No hay preguntas, ¿ok? Gracias.
Is Ken, oh, sorry, I wasn't on. We have one more walk-on, that's Ken Blair. Ken, I see you're on Zoom. Do you want to unmute yourself? Thank you.
Howdy.
Hello.
Get my script. Good afternoon, Senator Kushner, Representative Sanchez, Senator Sampson, Representative Ware, and the distinguished members of the Labor and Public Employees Committee. My name is Ken Blair. I'm the president of Unite Here Local 217. We represent about 2,500 workers across the state of Connecticut and about 30-something shops. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of HB 5164. Recently, I had a carload of my coworkers, and we were going down to New Haven to have a little rally down at UNH, and the topic of strike came up. And one of the first things they said was, who can afford to go on a strike? You know, we do have a little strike fund, but it won't keep people solvent for very long. And right now, because of the fact the company has all the power that can outlast us, they can see the people faltering probably after like 3 weeks, and then they start, you know, bringing in other workers. When that happens, people feel they have to settle for a contract they don't really believe in, and that they're going to regret later on down the road. We haven't had a strike in Local 217 since the 1980s. We have negotiated good contracts when we sit down and negotiate in good faith. When we negotiated the last round of contracts at the state colleges, which was during the COVID time, we were negotiating first with a lawyer who said he had to take our proposals and run them up the flagpole. So when we asked the flagpole to come to negotiations, after that, people making decisions came to the table. We settled a good contract. We kept our 100% employer paid raise, health care. And we got decent raises. That's the kind of contract you get when everyone is at the table committed to settling a contract. Just the opposite, though, is why I support 5164, because even though we have the right to strike, the workers are at a distinct disadvantage. They're afraid of lost wages or having to take a second job. Unemployment insurance is one way to take away some of that financial fear. Recently, I was talking to my stepfather. He worked at Pratt Whitney. There was a strike coming. Instead of him wanting to be across the picket line, he actually took his camper to work so that he wouldn't have to cross a picket line, because he wanted to make sure his family was taken care of and fed. So, you know, people do things they maybe wouldn't want to do. We take votes. These millionaires, they can sit back and watch us and try and dry us up and make sure we hurt. It takes years to get our money back. So that's why, you know what, we need to be able to say we're going to walk out that door. We need to take the time. And if we have to go on strike for 2 or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, whatever it takes, but we can't do it if people have to live on less money than that, you know, even than their unemployment, because our strike fund is not a wealth, you know, it's not a wealth bucket for them either. So I'd like to thank you for your time. What am I, the closer here?
Well, actually, I now learned that we have a couple more people on the list. But
Yeah, I guess my name got overlooked earlier. I had signed up for an earlier slot and somehow they missed me somewhere, so that's why I'm this late.
well, I apologize for missing you. You should have brought it to our attention. We could have called you in earlier.
There was a known IT issue that has since been recognized, and it was run up the chain of command and addressed since then. So this has brought that to the attention of the correct people.
Thank you. So I'm sorry that that happened to you. We try and avoid that, but thank you for hanging in there tonight.
Just ruined just lost a few minutes of beauty sleep, that's all.
Okay.
All right, you have a great night.
All right, thank you, Ken. Next up, we have Jennifer Perez Caraballo.
Short. Okay. So, good evening, members of Labor and Public Employees Committee of the Connecticut General Assembly. My name is Jennifer Perez Caraballo, and I live in Hartford, Connecticut. I support Senate Bill number SB 7, an act concerning Connecticut paid sick days. I am the current director of community organizing at She Leads Justice and have been working since before it was actually legal to do so. So I have a lot of experience when it comes to paid sick days and unpaid sick days. I've experienced both the relief and frustration of having access to varying levels of sick leave. In the most challenging times, I've been penalized for using unpaid sick time to tend to the care for myself and my community. In college was the worst of it when my body's ailments collided with my desire to leave generational poverty. So AKA, I could not afford to take days off, but I had to. And to be honest, I'm still coming back from that experience. Disability justice often reminds us that we all fall apart. The slowing down of a once healthy body that will eventually succumb to death is actually really normal. And I hope this helps you understand. We can't rely on the goodwill, foresight, and knowledge of the business community to make this decision for us. Paid sick time is a sound business practice that helps us retain, attract, and increase the number of qualified employees and contributes to a more equitable Connecticut. Unpaid and unprotected sick time for a people that will absolutely get sick causes and perpetuates huge inequalities. Without mandated paid sick leave, our legislative framework perpetuates a culture where sick time is treated as worker incompetence rather than a normal part of life. It doesn't recognize the struggle of a mother caring for a disabled or a sick child, for example. And in a world where childcare is predominantly a woman's responsibility, a state without paid sick leave fails to support women in the workforce and sets us up for failure continuously. It is a different kind of cruelty to ask a mom to demonstrate more allegiance to her employer's assumed profits over the child she birthed or at least cares for, which is what you're asking us to do every single time. The message is clear here. We don't make space for the reality of women because we don't value what we contribute to society. Additionally, I am urging legislators to amend this bill to align with the definition of family found. Actually, we can be as expansive as we need to with the definition of paid family. Queer families across the U.S. are facing frightening times, where our very existence is being legislated against. Do y'all understand that people are legislating against me and my child? So for Connecticut to regress in its definition of family would be yet another blow to the queer community, and a really loud one in these times. I am queer, and I am a mother to a queer child. Include us, always, and especially right now. Queer individuals aren't the only ones who need an expanded definition of family. As a proud Puerto Rican, which anyone who knows me knows that, I hold deep respect for my culture and community. And in my culture, family extends beyond blood relations. Family includes my great-grand-aunts. 4 of them are still alive, by the way. My cousins and their children. My aunts, my lifelong childhood friends who have often shared half my rent. The foster children my grandmother raised who are now adults and have children themselves, and cherished members of my care group because I am a disabled person. In this list, you can see the needs of communities of color, Caribbean families, queer individuals, disabled people who rely on attendant networks of care, people surviving poverty, and so many other people. So why do you keep excluding us? So I ask you today, now that we all kind of agree that sick time is a service to the society, because even the folks who opposed this bill said, yeah, you know what, people should not come to work sick. So now that we all agree on that, right? Will you include me Will you include my reality as a single working mom with no childcare and the head of a household to a very, very queer Caribbean family? Am I included? Will you prioritize my financial and physical health? Am I included? Will you help me make ends meet while protecting my job and letting me be an excellent mom? Does my child not deserve that? Will you include all the women and all the people who lovingly stood up with us here today? Will you include them? Or will you let us know once again that our contributions to this state that we built ourselves don't matter? Pass SB 7, pass paid sick days. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you. You probably shouldn't get up yet. There may be a question. I hate to tell you that, but you know, obviously you've been here all day and I've seen you helping others prepare their testimony and being translated. So I appreciate all you've done today. You know, we've had this question come up about the definition of family. I think you made a point that we had not heard, but I'm very much well aware of, is how much the rights of the LGBTQ community is under attack in other states. And we certainly don't align ourselves with those other states that are restricting people's rights. And so I think you've asked a really important question here tonight. I know I'm certain that this committee, we're going to have more conversation about the compromise that was reached last year and what it means for certain families. So I appreciate your testimony very much. I don't think you're necessarily the last person, by the way. I have to forewarn folks. There's another person on the list, but before I get to that, I see Representative Hughes has a question or comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for really raising that the value of the work of women. I haven't heard that specified, and I almost pointed that out in another testimony. Do you think it's because society has taken for granted unpaid labor of women, including in the caregiving, as why there's almost a refusal to begrudgingly afford paid sick days to workers because they've traditionally been cared for by unpaid women family members?
Thank you for that question. So I don't know exactly where this started from, but what I can say is that government for a very long time excluded women from positions of leadership and power and from being able to be at the table. And so well-meaning men created policy for a very long time without the experience, information, and knowledge of women and the things that we take into consideration as important parts of society, which are actually very important because raising children is super important. You will be replaced by my children, for example, right? Let's remind ourselves of that. Let's be real about what we're actually talking about. One lifetime is all we have, and you will get sick, right? And you will need this. And so I can say, yeah, we've been excluded from positions of power for so very, very long that, like, is it because y'all haven't considered us and are so used to not considering us that you're still in the transition period? Or is it because you think of this as unpaid labor? I'm not sure. Either way, include us, please. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Okay, thank you very much for your testimony. I do have on the list Rose Leander, but I don't see anyone on Zoom, and I think I know most everybody in the room. So I don't think Rose is here. I do want to ask, because we are then at the end of this public hearing, unless there's someone else who is in the room who wishes to be heard. Okay, I don't see anybody jumping forward. So I do believe with that, we have concluded our public hearing of the Labor and Public Employees Committee. I do want to announce the date of the next hearing, which is February 27th. And that hearing is scheduled to begin at
That next hearing will be starting at 10 a.m. in room 2A and on Zoom on February 27th.
Thank you very much, Cameron, and thank you to the staff who've been here all day helping. And thank you to the committee members who toughed it out both here and on Zoom. And that concludes our hearing for tonight. Thank you.
Picture, come on. A late night picture, late committee. Come on.